Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 230. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. I am Chaz Lichadelo, host of Planet America on ABC Australia, and this is an official podcast of the ABC. So say hi to the Ombudsman for me. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you listen, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel, and you can find highlights there as well now. And we're on Facebook at the Chaz from Planet America channel. You also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs, and if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPcastrDave. That's at PepChaz Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen right now or in the blurb or the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lucky privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And do not forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. And we're recording this at 3:37 p.m. on Friday. This is going to be coming out late. I'm sorry. It takes a while for us to edit these things afterwards. Or this is at 1:18 a.m. in New York time, Friday. There you go. That's my calculation. But for now, let's turn to the lady who will never raise the stakes on inconsequential views. I speak of the transcendent Melina Wicks, who has some news for us, Melina.
Oh, I didn't realize we're doing this at the very top. Okay. Well, yeah, the news is, if it wasn't increasingly apparent in the last PEP, I'm very pregnant. And so I will be wrapping up soon on PEP and Planet America for a little while, but I will then be back around April next year. So I'm not quite finished yet, but finishing quite soon. So yes,
very much.
But I have not been fired when I disappear. I'm coming back.
I want to get right out there, just in case I forgot, because I often say I'm going to talk about things and completely forget about them because I get distracted by some court case or something. So so get out there, and can I just say, we didn't get a single person. Think about all the PEPs you've done over the last 7.5 months, and we didn't get a single person saying, "Is she pregnant?" So I think everyone wants your secret.
Well, it's particularly disguised on Planet America because I have the lectern in front of me in a very strategic position, so that's made it easier to not show the awkward in-between phases. But yes, I think it's probably about time to flag it. But it's a PEP exclusive because we haven't said it on Planet yet. Pretty
exciting stuff. Okay, so what are you grateful for, apart from the fact that you have somehow managed to hide a pregnancy for nearly 8 months?
It is more than 8 months.
There you go.
8.5 months. But
there you go.
I am grateful for the Department of War because of all... Of all of the Trump controversies and bad things are happening, and obviously, America is in quite a dark place at the moment in many respects. I like it when the worst, there's a controversy that's kind of at worst, a bit dumb and mildly amusing. And I find it particularly funny in this instance, beyond it just being generally stupid and unnecessary. And why is anybody spending their time on this in the top levels of government? The fact that Pete Hegseth, who is obsessed with masculinity and strength, is now calling himself the Secretary of War. That makes him sound tougher, when I would suggest that it's not the defense in Secretary of Defense that is the feminine word.
That's an excellent observation.
So, yes, good on the Secretary for getting tough.
That's just, actually, I'm glad you use that as you're grateful, because that's just about the only topic we're not covering this week that we could have covered, because we just had too much to talk about. So I just thought, screw that. That's the one that doesn't matter.
I think I've made the important point to make about it.
You really have. Well, the only other thing I would say, if it did come up, was just the same thing. I went into the detail on this on Planet America last Monday. If you're interested, you can go have a look. But just in case you didn't watch Planet America, I should just point out something that has not got nearly enough coverage, which is they didn't change the name. Like, all the coverage is acting like they changed the name when they didn't change the name. They gave the Department of Defense, which is still called the Department of Defense, a second name. Yeah. Which is the Department of War.
They are the lame person at school who wants to make a nickname happen. They're like, call me this now, guys. This is my new thing.
Yes.
Well, no.
Yeah, give himself some sort of hardcore name, like Shark or something. Just like some vicious name. You go, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Sorry. I'd love to hear the nickname that Pete Hegseth would give to himself. I bet you his gaming name has the word Warfighter in it, like Warfighter 08 or something. But anyway, for those who keep track of my gratefuls, probably every second grateful is when someone else does my work for me, because it just saves me some time. I always love it when that happens. And Jessica Reidl, who is a friend of the podcast, she's done a beautiful video, which I will link to you in the homework. You can look for yourself, about the idea of, we need to raise the tax rates back up to 91% like they were under JFK, because it was fine under JFK. We need to raise the taxes. That's what we should do. And she basically breaks down why that is a fallacious economic argument, and she does it very well. So you can go. I'll tell you some highlights just to wet your whistle. She makes the point that if you actually look, the key is not what the marginal tax rate is in each bracket. The key is how many people are in each bracket, plus how many tax deductions are there, plus how much economic growth is there, plus a whole bunch of other factors. And she says if you look at that 91% income tax rate from the 1950s, at that point in time, the entire tax system averaged only 7.2% of GDP in federal income tax revenues. 7.2%. Then in the 60s and 70s, when it dropped to the 70% top tax bracket, it became 7.8% of GDP. It went up. And since 1981, when tax rates have flown down, the average has been 8.1% of GDP. That is not her doing the Laffer curve, saying, the lower you make the highest tax bracket, the more money you raise. No, she's saying there are other factors involved as well. And so you just need to be smart about how you do this, rather than just going, we'll just whack up the highest tax bracket. She's not against increasing income tax brackets, but she just said you've got to be smart about it. And she makes a few other points as well about, for instance, people like to compare to European tax rates, not realizing that Europe basically makes the same amount of money from their income tax system as America does. They're basically the same. I know you did a briefing in this area recently. And used some previous work from Jessica Reidl in this space, because it is there's sort of, I think, her hobby horse a little bit of raising middle class taxes, and also that Europe has VAT taxes, which America doesn't. Yeah, she says basically that Europe raises 7.2% more of GDP, more tax than America does, because of its VAT, which is worth 7.2% of GDP. But the income tax bounty is basically the same from both systems. Just they also have a VAT on top of that. And she makes the point, even in Scandinavia, which collect 14% of GDP more than the US does in tax revenue, once again, their income tax system raises the same amount as America does. Just they got VAT and a higher payroll tax, which raises all that money. So anyway, you can go have a look for yourself. Saves me the time. Thank you, Jessica. I am grateful for your work. We're not going to do much correspondence, because honestly, you'll see we're going through a lot. We are definitely going to go over 3 hours. I'm sorry, Supervisor. I'll just make sure that's okay during one of the clips. But, just a couple of correspondences. One from Dave. I've got to read this one out. Dave sent me saying on purpose, I want you to do this in the correspondence. Okay, Dave, I'll take orders. I have just remembered something about the Ferals, Dave writes, which I was too old to watch, but my little brother watched. There was a rabbit called Mixie who was introduced in the theme song as a mixed up, muddled up bunny, hence the name. but it was also an obvious reference to myxomatosis, a disease fatal to rabbits that was introduced to wipe them out. That was a bit fucked up, ABC, says Dave. Thank you, Dave. Very, very important correspondence. And I'll throw in one more just from Kev, who just linked me to something that, I'd seen it anyway, but Kev underlined it. So I went back and had a look. Kev said, "This is cool." And it is cool. It's The New Yorker has done an analysis, a very conservative analysis of how much money Trump has made and their family have made from the presidency. They evaluated it at $3.4 billion, with most of that coming in the last year and most of that coming from crypto. I'll put the link in there. You can watch it for yourself. I'm not just going to recap what they've done, but thank you for the pointer, Kev, and I will put it in the homework. If you're interested, go have a look. It's quite well done. Okay, as I said, I'm just racing on here. Very quick update. I've really got to deal with this, but I'm going to do it fast. You might recall about a month ago, about a month, we were talking about Israel and Gaza, and I talked about a viral video I'd seen of an interview with a guy called Tony Aguilar, who was a contractor for the GHF, whatever that stands for. Was it it's the American food agency that was distributing food in Israel. Sorry, in Gaza. Maybe Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is my guess. What it stands for. Thank you, Lockie. And he told about this. It's quite a moving story about him bonding with this little kid who'd walked for miles, gave him some food. He walked away happy. They had a bond. He walked away happy, and then he got shot. That was the end of the kid. That was the story. And I said, at the time, I remember when I introduced it, I said, the thing is, it's so hard to believe anything you hear when it's about Israel and Gaza, because both sides are full of propaganda and they're both really good at it. And there are no independent people in there because Israel won't let them in. There are no independent journalists. So if there's a journalist, they are either with the Israeli army, with the IDF, and they're basically being looked after by the IDF, or they are allied with Hamas in some way. And so it's really, really hard to get some straight news out of there. And I said, this guy could be our ticket to find out something interesting, because he was with one side, switched to the other side, but just was disillusioned and seemed to be spilling the tea. And so I thought, this is really valuable. Turns out, not valuable. It turns out he was acting like he was a neutral when he was most definitely not a neutral. And the reason I say that is because Amir, the kid from his story, he's not dead. He's alive. A video interview has been released of him. The Daily Wire can't write enough about it. They love it for obvious reasons. Him and his mum have now been spirited away from Gaza because they're worried that they will get killed. Well, he will get killed because he's better propaganda value dead, because that's what the story was. Yeah, I'm not the only going about it, but I think it's my obligation when I introduce you to a story and there's a big update like that, you need to know. So you can go and I'll put the article in the homework. You can look for yourself, and if you're interested in it, you can read up about it. And maybe you don't believe them. Maybe you think there's something funny going on there. I believe them. Okay, tariffs. Update on tariffs. The Trump administration has obviously lost its appeal in the appeals court 2 weeks ago. They immediately appealed to the Supreme Court, and they asked for an expedited hearing. They said the ruling, quote, gravely undermines the president's ability to conduct real-world diplomacy and his ability to protect the national security and economy of the United States. They got the fast-track treatment from the Supreme Court that says they'll hear oral arguments in the first week of November. When they handed the decision down is a different question altogether. A few interesting things about this. Number one, the Supreme Court didn't have to hear the appeal. There's no reason. There's already plenty of rulings there. If they thought the appeals court nailed it, they would have just shut the hell up and just left it. But clearly they didn't. Now, usually there's only two reasons the Supreme Court will take a case. One, because two appeals courts are split on the same question. One saying they favour one side, the other saying they favour the other side. And they need a referee. Or because the Supreme Court wants to change something about what the appeals court said. No split in this case. So does that mean they want to fine for Trump? We can't know at this point in time. Maybe they just want to tweak their reasoning. I don't know. But just the fact they're taking the appeal makes me nervous because I really like that ruling from the appeals court. Second interesting thing. As part of their submission, Scott Bessent wrote a declaration and it said some fascinating things. Like, for instance, as of the date of this declaration, the United States has announced frameworks with Japan, Indonesia, the United Kingdom, the Philippines, Vietnam, South Korea, and the European Union. These frameworks set the parameters for continued negotiation regarding binding final terms of agreements with these foreign trading partners. Hang on, wait. I thought they were deals. I didn't think they were frameworks that needed to be negotiated. I thought they were deals. I kept hearing about deals. It was like a Persian carpet warehouse ad. There were deals being done. No. According to Scott Bessent, frameworks that need to be negotiated. That's interesting. Bessent also said the agreements were worth $2.35 trillion of investment. Hang on. Trump said they were worth $15 trillion in investment. $15 trillion. Once again, seems like they're pricing like a Persian carpet warehouse ad as well. Everything must go. Slashed $15 trillion to $2.35 trillion deals. Bessent needs to stop lying about Trump's trade deals. That's my takeaway, especially in a court submission. Do you have anything to say about tariffs?
More on court rulings. I was going to say this later in relation to immigration, but I'll say it now because I think it is equally applicable here, which is just that in the last PEP, you noted that Trump is still appealing decisions to the Supreme Court, which was something that was speculated in the birthright citizenship case that he might not.
Yes.
Because he might just take a small concentrated loss in the lower courts and not risk having the Supreme Court uphold or overturn, against his interests. And I just don't see any reason why he wouldn't appeal to the Supreme Court for now, because that strategy would involve accepting a limited loss, like in the case of tariffs, for example.
Yep.
Is, to not appeal, you have to accept like, oh, yes, the tariffs are illegal, but we're not going to appeal it. You have to say that. Whereas till now, they've maintained that they are going to abide by Supreme Court rulings, just nobody else's. And I think that will continue at least until they start losing at the Supreme Court. So up until now, I think he's decided that it's his court, they're his people. He's got a majority that are going to do what he wants, and he's going to keep winning. So why not take it to them? Just forget everyone else. Just get it to the Supreme Court. They'll give me what I want. And so far, that seems like the right call. They seem to be bending over backwards to justify not getting in his way in various ways. Not always necessarily affirming everything he's doing, but finding loopholes or sidesteps to not say flat out no's to him.
Yeah.
If they reach a point on any of these cases where they do say no on something he cares about, that's the test for me. That's when we see, is he going to start flat out ignoring court rulings? I mean, they've done that at the lower level, but that's where we see, does he start basically just completely flouting the law and not even pretending that he's not? But for now, why not take it to the Supreme Court? Because where's the evidence that they're going to stand in his way?
You're waiting for the first big case after the Supreme Court says no.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
That's when we find out whether they are, in any way actually drawing a line for themselves that matters, or if they just are calculating the Supreme Court is going to give them everything they want.
Well, I feel like we're going to learn a lot about this Supreme Court over the next 2 to 3 months. I know it's very, very easy to keep on going, the next one. But I haven't been doing that. I haven't been, to be fair, it's not like if you went back in April when you listened to PEP, I wasn't going, this case is the one. I was not doing that. There's a few of these, the one cases. Tariffs is definitely one of them. Alien Enemies Act is definitely one of them, which we're going to get to, I hope. There's probably 3 cases at the moment where I think, okay, when these 3 cases are over, we're going to know if we got some flunkies in the Supreme Court or not. I mean, at the moment, they are avoiding conflict. There is no doubt. But there's been not much full-on flunkyism so far. Just them going out of their way to avoid confrontation, which, to be honest, is their job. They're meant to be doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it hasn't been full-on contemptuous flunkyism quite yet.
Yes. But yeah, I also think we have not seen yet whether Trump is committed to following process legally or whether he just hasn't had reason to stop yet.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm trying to remember. There was one case which I thought, no, that's just despicable. I'm trying to remember what it was. There was one case. I think it was one case where I was just absolutely outraged. But only one so far, I think. The tariff one, I'll be so outraged if the Supreme Court give it that. Anyway, let's move on. An update about unemployment, Melina. That's an exciting one. People love my economic stats updates. They hang for it. We should rename the podcast from PEP to Economic Update. That will get the viewers in. Some interesting, in my view, economic figures this week. First of all, August employment figures came out this week. The BLS reported only 22,000 jobs added in August, which is a lot lower than 75,000 jobs, which was forecast to be added in August. The unemployment rate's now 4.3%, slowly creeping up from 4.1% in June. 4.3% is now the highest rate since 2021. Over the year, the labour force participation, so over the last 12 months, actually it's over 2025, the labour force participation rate dropped by 0.4% to 62.3% of the population being in the labour market. And also, over the year, the employment population ratio dropped by 0.4% to 59.6% of the population being employed. Why have I told you those stats? That is after the administration has supposedly cleared out a lot of illegal immigrants who are taking everyone's jobs, if you recall. Might seem like a rather random bone for me to pick at. They go, well, why are you having a drive-by there? The reason why is because what I just described to you was exactly J.D. Vance's argument during the election campaign last year about how if you remove illegal immigrants from the labour force, that would create the room and the opportunity for native-born Americans to get back into the labour force and take those jobs. So the employment ratio should go up and the labour force participation rate should go up if you get rid of a whole bunch of illegal immigrants. This is J.D. Vance making that exact argument.
I'm asking how you would deal with the knock-on effect of your proposal to remove millions of people who work in a critical part of the economy.
Well, I think that what you would do is you would take, let's say, for example, the 7 million prime-age men who have dropped out of the labor force, and you have a smaller number of women, but still millions of women prime-age who have dropped out of the labor force. You absolutely could re-engage folks into the American labor market. This is, I think,
to work in construction?
Of course you could.
I mean, the unemployment rate is 4.1%. Most people who
unemployment rate, Lulu, this is important.
But most people who don't work can't work in the regular economy. They're in the military. They're parents. They're sick. They're old. They might not want to work in construction.
The unemployment rate does not count labor force participation dropouts. And again, this is one of the really deranged things that I think illegal immigration does to our society, is it gets us in a mindset of saying we can only build houses with illegal immigrants when we have 7 million, just men, not even women, just men who have completely dropped out of the labor force.
So 7 months on, this has not worked. The labor force participation rate of Americans has fallen this year by 0.4%. Even if we isolate the native-born population alone. The percentage of native-born Americans who are, I can't believe they take that stat, who are currently employed has risen from 81.1% 12 months ago to 81.2% now. So it's basically the same. So far, Vance is wrong, and we should acknowledge it. Also, manufacturing is still losing jobs, like it has every single month since the tariffs began in February. This month, the industry lost 12,000 more jobs. That's 78,000 lost in the manufacturing industry for the year so far. But it gets worse. There were revisions for the last few months as well June was revised down from 14,000 jobs created to 13,000 jobs lost in June. July was revised up from 73,000 to 79,000 jobs created. So on net, revisions subtracted 21,000 jobs. And that June result I just told you was the first negative result for jobs created since 2020, at least for the next 3 minutes. You'll see what I mean. Also, July was the first month since 2021 when there were more people looking for jobs than jobs looking for people. Here's the graph. Have a look. If you see here, the red is the job openings. The blue are the unemployed people. You can see there was 7.18 million job openings and 7.21 million unemployed people in July this year. Why does that matter? It matters because the more people that are looking for jobs, the more desperate people are to keep their jobs. And it means wages stay down, and it means workers stay in shitty jobs they don't like. Also, that is generally a sign of a poor economy. And this is what all these recent jobs results look like on a graph when you put them all together. They look terrible. If you look at from 2025 onwards, at the end of that chart, it's a teeny tiny. That's not even the city. Those skyscrapers there. That's not a Manhattan skyline. That's Bombo. No offense to Bombo. I'm sure we've got lots of peppers in there. But all I'm saying is you're not a big city. That's all I'm saying, Bombo. Don't take offense. So that's a pretty ugly graph for Trump. Except it turns out that graph is not correct, because we now get to the second interesting part of the week, the 2024 revisions. A few days after that result, we get a whole bunch more revisions from April 2024 to March 2025. And those revisions were way down. 911,000 fewer jobs created over 12 months. 10 months under Biden, 2 months under Trump. Between April 2024 and March 2025, instead of averaging 147,000 jobs per month, they actually averaged 71,000 jobs created per month. Not good. And that was after last August, when the BLS already reported 818,000 fewer jobs in the previous year from that. So that's two big revisions in a row. I've got a graph of revisions for the past decade and a half. If you have a look, you will see those two revisions in the last year kind of stand out as being big negative numbers. They're the worst since the GFC. So what does this all mean then? What this means, well, first of all, what it doesn't mean is that Trump's doing well. Or because Biden did worse than we thought doesn't mean Trump's doing well. Even if you include those revisions into the current employment graph, it still looks shit. Let's have a look. Let's include those revisions. Annual averages there. The 2023 annual average, the yellow is above 200,000 jobs being created. The 2024 average in blue is just over 100,000 jobs being created. And the 2025 average in green is getting damn close to 0 jobs being created. So Trump's not doing too well anyway. And just wait till 2025's revisions kick in. That might be a negative average that Trump's looking at right now. It might be way worse than we think. What it does mean, though, is it means Jerome Powell, his life is about to get easier. It's going to be a great time to be Jerome Powell in the next few weeks, because he is going to finally be able to cut those interest rates from Trump, because the economy sucks. And so it needs some stimulus. This is the silver lining of having an economy that sucks. You get stimulation from the Fed, and that's what they're going to get. Also, this also explains what went on in the election last year, because we've spent the best part of a year now going, geez, why did the Democrats get pumped so hard when the economy was doing so well? Well, maybe the economy wasn't doing so well. Maybe that's the answer. Pew, in October, this is October last year, found a quarter rate economic conditions as excellent or good. 37% say they're only fair. 38% say they're poor. Maybe that was a fair assessment. Finally, what this means is that we seem to really have a problem with the BLS and their unemployment numbers. Now, look, I haven't changed my points I've been making all along about the BLS. I still think it's a miracle that they're as accurate as they are. Like, when we're looking at jobs figures, we're looking at just the bleeding edge of the data they collect. And they're collecting data for hundreds of millions of people. So, yeah, they're out by a couple of 100,000. That's not a shock. I still think that there is no incompetence or bias at play. By the way, I'll give him credit. E.J. Anthony, who I was just about to sink the boot into, I will at least give him credit. He predicted back in February there was going to be a big revision this year. So, yeah, he's not completely hopeless. I'll give him that. But anyway, even though I think they're doing a great job, it's just a question mark over how useful their numbers are. The bottom line is if you have to say plus or minus 150,000 every single month, it's completely useless, especially if you're the Fed, which need really, really finely detailed answers. Yeah, look, I'm not sinking the boot in. I'm just saying if this is a sign of things that come from now on, the unemployment figures are completely pointless. So let's hope it's not. And what I'm telling you is I support the fact that the Trump administration is currently getting their Inspector General in the Labor Department to review the BLS's data collection efforts. I think that's a good thing to do. Let's see if there is a way that can be improved. I mean, I'm not knocking them at all, but at the same time, if it's possible for them to do better, then that would be great, because right now, bloody useless. So it'd be nice if they weren't bloody useless, is all I'm saying. Fingers crossed that the Inspector General finds something. And the third figure that came out was inflation. Do you have anything to say about either of those two, by the way, Melina, before I get to inflation?
The one thing I was going to jump back to is that JD Vance clip, which was a while back, but the point of, we just need to get rid of the illegal immigrants and then Americans will be more interested in these kind of jobs like construction and farm work. I mean, I did a piece on this for Planet America earlier in the year as well, but the issue is not that there are illegal immigrants there. The issue is that American consumers have become very used to paying very little for many of their things. And yeah, you can get Americans to do those jobs, but you have to pay them more money. And if you pay them more money, consumers have to pay more money for the goods and services that they're producing. And that's the part that no one ever says. I'm not saying that, that's fine if that's your position. I think that's a reasonable position to say, we just want to pay more to employ people who are living here rather than encouraging illegal immigrants to work for worse paying conditions so we don't have to pay so much for our food and houses. That's a reasonable position to take, but they never actually say it that way. They never make it clear that that's the trade-off that you have to make. It's not just kick all the illegal immigrants out and everything's just going to be great. Americans will do those jobs and nothing else will change. What changes is it's more expensive, or people just don't have the workers to fill those jobs. Which
also means if it's more expensive that they're going to have to raise everyone's wages. You have to increase the minimum wage for once in the last 20 years. I think it's still $7.25 off the top of my head. Not much.
Yes.
Third stat, inflation. The August PPI inflation figures came out. For those who don't remember, the PPI is the Producer Price Index. It's basically wholesale prices. Last month, if you recall, the Producer Price Index inflation rate went up 0.7% in a month, which is massive. And it looked like tariffs were about to bite hard. Well, economists expected another 0.3% hike this month, and what they got was a drop in prices by 0.1%. That's a lot less than a 0.3% hike. Services sector, which drives 80% of the GDP, was down 0.2% in price increases. So, again, cheaper. Even the goods sector, which is obviously most affected by tariffs, was only up by 0.2%. So that was extremely good news for Trump and his tariffs because, hey, they weren't as inflationary this month like people were expecting them to be. So what this tells us is that, in my view, is that there are seriously choppy waters with all these stats. And you really need to look over a series of months to have any idea what's going on and average them out. You just have to, I'm afraid, because there's so much room for error here. Oh, and also the latest CPI figures came out yesterday, which is the headline inflation rate, standard inflation rate, going up 0.4% for the month, which is a lot, 2.9% for the year. Core inflation, that's prices minus food and energy, went up 0.3% for the month and 3.1% for the year. So that's, unlike the PPI, that is a bit of price growth, but not so much that it's freaking people out. Not so much it's going to stop Jerome Powell cutting interest rates. And this is what the CPI graph looks like if you're interested. Look, it's not ideal, the 2.9%, but as you can see, it's very much in keeping with the last 2 years. It's basically the same kind of rate for the last 2 years. So that's pretty steady she goes. And that announcement of the interest rate cut is going to be beginning next week, by the way. I think I'm not sure if it's Monday or Tuesday, but it's right at the beginning next week. Do you have anything to say about any of that, Melina? Well, why don't you give us
Stats Nugget.
a stats nugget on? Okay, this is. I'm going to be honest. This is something that I was going to present to you because I saw it and found it interesting, but then I didn't really have time to prepare it, so I just said to Melina, "Why don't you prepare it?" So why don't we pretend I have no idea what you're talking about? You can tell me about this exciting. I will say this: it's a poll. Don't blame Melina for this. Blame me, Dave. Dave hates when I do polls with Stats Nuggets. He hates it. But he's not here. So the mice are going to play. Woo! How do the mice go? Squeak. Woo! Squeak, squeak.
That'll be a sting by next week.
Probably. Anyway, you, Melina, know quite a lot about having successful careers and having children. And this involves both of them. So why don't you tell us about it?
Sure, what an intro. All right, so NBC released a poll in the past week. They asked 18 to 29-year-olds what was important to their personal definition of success.
Yes.
And respondents were allowed to pick up to three choices out of 13 options. And people noted the partisan and gender split in the sort of most popular results. So for men who voted for Trump, having children was the top result at 34%.
Yep.
Being married was fourth at 29%. And having a fulfilling job or career was third at 30%. So basically on par with being married.
Yep.
Compared to women who voted for Harris, so we're taking the opposite, where the top result was having a fulfilling job or career at 51%. And in comparison, being married and having children were both at the very bottom of the list at 6%. And just to flesh out the rest of the picture, women who voted for Trump, financial independence was at the top at 40%. Having children was at 26% and being married at 20%. They were kind of in the middle. And men who voted for Harris, fulfilling job career was at the top at 54%, so highest of anybody. Mm-hmm. And being married and having children were at 11% and 9% respectively. So to summarize, for men who voted for Trump, having children was the most important thing, more than career. For women and men who voted for Harris, career was the most important thing. Having kids was way down. And women who voted for Trump, kind of in the middle of those polls, opposite polls.
All right. So do you have any explanations or theories about what is going on here?
So the first caveat I would give is that the wording of the question asking about success may have primed some people to think more in terms of career, with the potential exception of male Trump voters, because pronatalism is a topic in the culture, in certain parts of the, young male Trump skewing ecosystem.
Yep.
But for me, my first question when I saw this poll was, is there an actual real world difference in the choices people are making around these issues and how they're living their life in terms of Republicans versus Democrats? Or is it just that people are expressing their priorities differently? They wouldn't necessarily frame their attitudes to marriage and children and careers that way, but it's not a difference in terms of how they're actually living their life. It turns out
someone's done their homework.
I've done some research. And it turns out there is a very real, significant and increasing partisan split in terms of actual lived life choices for Republicans and Democrats. You look like you want to jump in.
No, don't jump in this exact moment. But as soon as you say that tells me that Republicans are marrying Republicans and Democrats are marrying Democrats. Because otherwise, there wouldn't be a partisan split.
Sure. I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
Gallup had an article last year that looked at a century of data on marital status. And I found this really interesting. I wasn't aware of the split. They found before 1980, Republicans and Democrats were equally likely to marry. And while marriage rates have fallen across all groups since then, In recent decades, Democrats and independents, who are close to each other, have become much less likely to marry than Republicans. So specifically, it was about 90% for both sides from the 50s to the 70s. Now, the marriage rate among 30 to 50-year-olds is 67% for Republicans, 49% for Democrats, and 46% for independents.
That's really interesting.
So it's a 20-point gap, basically.
So in this case, it's that the Republicans are the odd ones out.
Yes. Democrats and independents are very close, and independents actually slightly less likely to be married even than Democrats. But yet Republicans are the outliers. And in terms of sort of fleshing out some of the details, which also kind of speaks to some of the explanations that I might have jumped to that are wrong as it turns out, the partisan gap for divorce is small. And the gap for de facto relationships is also small, just 2 percentage points. So it's not... those things are not explaining the differences in the actual rate of marriage. Also, Gallup found even adjusting for kind of obvious demographic differences between the parties, like education and religiosity, doesn't explain it. So, for example, Republicans with a degree are 22 points more likely to be married than Democrats with a degree. Republicans without a degree are also 22 points more likely to be married than Democrats without a college degree. Republicans who attend religious services weekly or more are 24 points more likely to be married than Democrats who attend religious services weekly. And Republicans who don't attend religious services weekly are 15 points more likely to be married than Democrats who don't attend religious services weekly. So it's not Republicans are more likely to be not college educated these days or more likely to be religious, because even among, the gap is there even for the religious versus the non-religious, the religious Republicans and religious Democrats. Or
if Republicans are getting married earlier and the divorce rates between the two are the same, that suggests that Republicans are having more successful marriages as well. They're better at it.
Or that there's a greater incentive against getting divorce.
Yeah. Good call. Isn't he good? Isn't so much what he says is valuable.
So in terms of sort of trying to explain, well, what is different in terms of Democrats and Republicans and how they're approaching this, Gallup found that the gap is in how Democrats and Republicans view marriage. So in 1988, there was a 5-point gap for adults younger than 50 who agreed married people are generally happier than non-married people. The gap in 2012 was 25 points. The data doesn't tell us why Republican and Democrat attitudes on these questions have diverged so much, but basically it seems to come down to Republicans have a much more favorable view of marriage, and by extension, we can probably assume having kids, than Democrats, and therefore they are more likely to get married because they view marriage as a good thing. And Democrats these days are more likely to not view marriage as a good thing or something that's going to make your life better, so they're less likely to get married.
I'll tell you something that is interesting. I'll tell you something I find interesting as well from that poll. I don't know what to do with this. You might be tempted when you're hearing all this to go, Democrats are more progressive and more about equality, and Republicans about home, barefoot and pregnant and all the rest of it. But you wearing shoes at the moment? Yeah, you are. Okay, just checking.
I don't when I'm at home. But.
Yeah, sure. But if you looked at the number one measure of success, according to women who vote for Trump, yes, they're more likely to favour getting married and having kids than women and men who vote for Harris. But that's not their number one. Their number one was financial independence. 40% of them said financial independence. The second most important thing to them was fulfilling job career, 32%. Those women who vote for Trump are actually, even though they're more into marriage than their Democrat equivalents, they also want to enter the marriage being financially independent and having fulfilling jobs and careers, which is, that is not a traditional view. That's a more modern view. So it's a weird kind of amalgam. I don't really know what to make of that, but I found that really interesting. And and they were, by the way, just to be clear, that 40% of women who 40% of women who vote for Trump who value financial independence. For the women who vote for Harris, it was only 32%. And for men who vote for Harris, it was only 29%. So many more women who vote for Trump valued financial independence than women who vote for Harris, which I found really interesting.
They put job and career number one. So, if you're choosing three, that might feel like more of a double up. They might be less likely to choose that.
Maybe.
Or maybe they just want jobs that don't pay well, which does track with stereotypes about left-wing people.
Yeah, maybe the poll isn't well designed. Maybe there's too much potential for double up. I don't know.
Do you have a theory on why there is such a difference in attitudes to marriage and potentially children, although that was not covered in the Gallup article,
I think it's
between Republicans and Democrats?
I think it's really, really, really easy for men who are voting for Trump, who might have traditional values, to put a very high value on having kids when they're probably not the ones who are going to be looking after the kids.
Sure, but the fact that there is a gap between the actual marriage rate means they are finding women to marry them and have the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, but those women they're marrying aren't valuing the kids as high as they are. Like I'm just saying, the fact that it's in particular that marriage and kids is so important to the men who vote for Trump in particular. They're on a pretty good wicket, those guys. Yeah, so you can understand why they might really value those particular scenarios. So that
it's very important for me to marry someone who will raise my kids.
Exactly. So that does leap out at me a bit. I mean, look, I think that it's a cultural thing. Surely. I mean, there is just no doubt that people from certain communities and certain traditions and certain backgrounds are just drummed into them that you're supposed to get married, and you're supposed to. I mean, look, I'm from that background. Yeah, like it's. I don't know how this relates to Trump voting or Harris voting, but yeah, just like if you are a second or third generation migrant. You grew up being drummed into that you were supposed to, number one, go to university. Number two, study very, very hard and get a very, very good job, and then get married and have kids and get the bambinos out. Like I said, I think it's a cultural thing. I don't feel like that's an intelligent thing to say, but I just think it's true.
I think that is true. I think also, when people talk about the cultural aspect of it, they tend to focus on the side that you just have, which is the sort of more conservative side that, conservatives value and drum into people the importance of marriage and children. But I also feel like potentially less talked about is that there is a trend or a dynamic on the progressive side that is the inverse of that, which is that it's kind of, and I think maybe it comes from a progressive's desire to kind of acknowledge and validate a wider range of, on the marriage side, a wider range of relationships and lifestyles. So it's correcting against that pressure that you have to get married, saying, actually, you don't have to, it's not important. There's, every different choice is valid. And in terms of kids, there was this sort of previous kind of stifling culture where you're not allowed to, ever, or it's frowned upon to acknowledge as a woman that, parts of raising kids is hard and not always awesome, and wanting to go to work is frowned upon. But in some ways, I think in progressive circles, and I say this as someone who was raised in a very sort of progressive environment, and in my work life, in sort of comedy and the arts and stuff, in a generally sort of progressive environment, I think it's almost, it's maybe controversial to call it an overcorrection, but in my personal, speaking from my own experience, I feel like it's gone the other way, where I growing up just never really heard anyone making in my circles an argument for marriage being good or even having kids being good, to the point where I decided quite late in life to have kids. And I kind of did it thinking, this will be fulfilling, but not enjoyable. And I was genuinely surprised, about all the nice parts of it, to be totally honest. I was nobody I know talks about this, that lots of it is actually really awesome and fun, and kids are funny and delightful so much of the time. And it kind of almost feels taboo sometimes to say that, to talk about enjoying being married or enjoying having kids. That's kind of not culturally. It's not that it's not acceptable. It's just kind of not a conversation that's had that much and I'm speaking from my personal experience, and I kind of so weighing whether to get into the story. I once had a conversation when I got engaged, which is a while ago now. I was catching up with a friend in the industry who was older than me and someone who's very successful in the industry and someone I really respect. And they asked me really bluntly, are you going to have kids? And I said, I don't know, because I didn't know yet. I hadn't decided yet. And she was like, do it. She's like, you basically said, have kids. I really regret not having kids. And I was so shocked to hear someone say that, because I'd never heard someone express that sentiment, and especially someone who, is just objectionably very successful, has, and she wasn't saying it to me in a sad way. It was just very matter of fact, but it was just like, I regret not doing it. You should do it. And it was genuinely the first time I'd really considered that I would regret not having kids. I was way more scared of regretting having kids, and then being like, this is a terrible mistake and I can't take it back, than the other way around. And so it really stood out to me that was like almost a shocking thing for me to hear. So yeah, it's just kind of all to say, it's all obviously very anecdotal, but I think in the same way that in conservative circles, it's probably still frowned upon for women to talk about valuing their careers. And I say this as someone who always valued having a career that I care about, and I enjoy working. In the same way that conservative circles still put that kind of pressure on people, I think there is kind of not a pressure, but like a lack of openness talking about, a perception that marriage and kids is traditional, or, and talking about it being good in some way denigrates people making different choices, which I don't think is correct at all. Like, other choices are, of course, valid. Yeah. But I think that I could see how that has an effect over time on people's attitudes to these things. It did for me, not to the point where I didn't ultimately go down that path, but where it took me a while to kind of decide that it would be a good path to go down.
That's a really interesting story. And you're right. You never hear about this. I'm not going to name the person, but someone who most people who watch or listen to this podcast would be aware of was a woman who had absolutely no intention of having kids. And then she was very scared of having one. And when she did, she just I'm going to have 50. She was, and once again, she was just terrified of the idea of having kids because she'd never heard anyone say anything positive about them.
I do think it's a thing. And I find it easy to imagine how that affects people's perceptions and what they might say to a pollster, especially when they're younger, like 18 to 29-year-olds. I am older than 29. So I would have given those same kinds of answers when I was 18 to 29. Yeah. And I would give different answers now. I mean, I'd still put career highly. You can choose 3. But, kids would be in there for me as well. Okay.
Now, I'm definitely not an expert on this, but given what you just said, can I just suggest one thing to the Peppers who are like Melina at 25 or 23 or whatever? What I would say is this. If you do share Melina's terror about the idea of having kids when she was younger, I also was very nervous about having kids as well. There is a this is what they don't tell you. There is a difference between having kid and having kids.
Oh, no.
There is a big difference. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to have my second.
As you're about to discover. I'm not trashing kids, but I'm just saying they are different things. They are different things. And having kid doesn't change your life as much as having kids does. And so what I would say is if you're worried, if you think, oh my God, this is a terrible mistake, you can dip your toe in the water with one. and as long as you're with a partner, as long as you're not single, as long as you're with a partner, you can juggle one kid. So pretty easily. So that everyone can do what they want to do. Like if you want to do work for a while, your partner can look after the kid while you're doing that. And then you can swap around and you can share the chores and you can share everything. It's very manageable. But when the numbers become even, and God knows when you're outnumbered, all of a sudden you better like kids because your life is about to become very kiddie. And so I would say if you are nervous, well just and you think, oh, will I, won't I? I don't think one kid is something to be terrified about. I think the big jump is 2.
Well, now I feel nervous.
You'll be fine. You decide that you like kids. So this will be okay. This will be okay. But just if you're a person who ends up not being hugely into kids, like your kids are not your entire life if you have one kid. But if you have more than one kid, then then yeah, your kids are a lot bigger part of your life. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, so I just throw that out there. I'm definitely not an expert. You definitely shouldn't take my advice. But, since no one has these conversations, let's we just did. Let's talk about American politics, shall we? Charlie Kirk. It was going to happen. Let's talk about him. Now, look, I didn't give you what I was read up to. I'm read up to Thursday morning at about 10 a.m. in America. So I'm a little less than 24 hours behind. I don't know what's happened in terms of the manhunt or whatever. I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm sure there were a lot of developments today. I'm sure Dave and I will be talking more about this next week. I've got no doubt about this. It's a huge story. But I personally want to focus on two areas that are not going to change and then leave the rest for another time for myself. But you, Melina, can kick us off. What are there any thoughts you want to share about Charlie Kirk, thoughts about Charlie Kirk's life, his death, whatever you want to start us off on, and then I'll get into my areas.
I mean, not in a lot of detail, to be honest, because as you say, it is a developing story. My gut reaction when I first heard the news is just that it's such a bad sign for America generally. Like, the level of political violence is clearly rising. The rhetoric on both sides is not helping. I find it striking that he had a private security team in the first place. Like, just in terms of what that says about what it means to be a public political figure in America today. Because the thing that kind of really struck me is not to downplay, Charlie Kirk was a significant figure in politics, obviously. Trump had told him that he was one of the 3 or 4 most important people to getting him reelected. So I'm not downplaying his importance, but he's not a person in power like a politician. So, with the assassination attempts against Trump, if either of those had been successful, it changes the course of history, right? You have a guy who did go on to become president who would not have gone on to become president if that assassination attempt had been successful. And so it's striking to me that Charlie Kirk, he was a media figure, a pundit. Yes, he was an organizer as well, and he was a significant figure within that scene. But killing him doesn't change anything about the world. And it doesn't, certainly it doesn't change anything for the better. Killing anybody doesn't. But to me, it was just a sign of how people are getting so wrapped up in the argument and the vitriol in terms of how people talk to each other, when it's like you can't even see this as someone who is trying to stop some event or change anything meaningfully in terms of a policy. Not that that justifies anything. It's just, to me, the striking thing about it is that it's a divergence from the logic of previous assassination attempts.
I tell you what you mean. Like, at the end of the day, and this sounds like a strange thing to say, but at the end of the day, pundits are in the entertainment industry. Like, they're not action people.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything.
They're just saying what they think.
Yeah. They are people on political shows who yell at each other. And if you're entertained by it, you watch lots of it. And if you're not, you switch to the football.
Yeah.
Like, they are just another form of television entertainment. I know they're a very serious form of television entertainment, but they're still just entertainment. If those are the dudes, if those dudes need security teams, there are a lot of important people out there who actually do make a difference to the world, other than just sitting around verbally masturbating. What security do they need? Like, you're right, it's a sign of a sick society that even the entertainers need security teams.
Yes, just how widespread the threat of violence is, and how low the threshold is to be at risk of your life ending just because you are involved in politics in some way, is what was really striking to me when I saw the news. And
I do say that as someone who has had a few security issues myself over the years, that's a different conversation. By the way, on the thing about the Trump saying that Charlie Kirk was the most important people for him to win, I don't buy that at all. I know Trump knows his campaign better than I do, probably, but Charlie Kirk, let's not overestimate. A lot of people have been saying this. I'm not having a go at you. So you're just quoting Trump. Let's look at what Charlie Kirk did in the 2024 election. He made a lot of money. Trump paid him to register people and get out the vote in 3 different states, and it was Turning Point was dipping their toe for the first time into that water, and it's very lucrative water, right? It's like Evian. Right? Lockie's giving me the supervisor's not going to like this. Can I just say, I didn't say if I liked Evian or not. I just said it costs a lot.
I don't like it, if that's helpful.
There we go.
That's weird.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it helps to say negative things about product either, Melina. but we'll see what the supervisor has to say. Like Charlie Kirk was given like 3 different states, 2 or 3 states to look after, and from memory, the Democrats overperformed in all of those states. So I don't think he won the election for Trump. But Trump did win all of those states, but he won a lot of states. I'm just saying the Democrats did better in those states than they did in the other states. So I don't know about that. But whatever, that is the myth that's forming. He's part of the reason that Trump won in 2024. Okay. You did sort of touch on some of the areas I want to go as well. Because you're thinking the same way as I am, not thinking about things that aren't changing. Right now, there are 2 different kinds of takes on Kirk. From the left, they say he was a hardcore extremist. From the right, he's a cross between Martin Luther King and Jesus Christ. He's this raceless individual, like this post-racial individual who sacrificed for our sins, basically. I think the truth about Kirk is that what he was most associated with, if I'm being totally honest here, it's hard to do when someone's dead, because you don't want to be a dickhead. But I'm trying to be as just straightforward as I can on this. What he's most associated with wasn't ideology or peace and love. It was grifting. If you asked me a week ago one word to describe Charlie Kirk, I would say grifter. I'm sure of it. That's just being honest. I'm not having a go. He spent his entire career raising money, and he's very good at it. Taking donations. His genuine gift was separating 70-year-old Republicans from their wallets. That was his gift. I mean, it's again, I'm not criticizing him. I'm not being mean here. It's just a fact. He went through his life taking tens of millions of dollars from 70-year-old Republican donors. That's how Turning Point started. In 2012, a 70-year-old donor called Bill Montgomery was inspired by a speech of Charlie Kirk's, and he made in high school and said, don't go to college. You need to start going around inspiring college students. I'll pay for you to do it. And he did. And then they found another 70-year-old donor, Foster Freeze, who then threw some more money at him. And then they went to another one and another one. The dude raised a lot of money from 70-year-old Republican donors. It's just a fact. And he's been making massive amounts of money ever since. On that note, Trump was very good for him, by the way. Like, he was making $4.3 million in 2016. By 2020, he was making $40 million, right? And that is because he tied himself to Trump and attracted so many more donations.
The organisation or him personally?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, the Turning Point made the money, not him. But yeah, I'm sure he made a fair slice of it. He had a personal connection to Trump as well. He basically became the son that Trump wasn't ashamed of. And he went hard to stop the steal stuff. He tied himself very, very close to Trump. Okay. Having said that, he was legitimately huge in the conservative world, as you said. Even though he essentially was just a moneymaker, they still rated him really highly. Turning Point was what started off Candace Owens, who is one of the biggest celebrities on the right to emerge in the last 5-10 years. She was Turning Point's communications director in 2018, and then she started making viral videos, and then she went on her own. We could easily isolate 10 grabs of Kirk's that were pretty noxious. Like, John had a fairly red-hot go on Planet America, but there are plenty of others he didn't get to. There are quite a few. But, also the guy did a lot of talking over the years. And honestly, I don't think, I said this on Planet America, was true. I don't think he had an actual ideology. I think he was just trying to make money. I think that was his thing. He went from being a huge fiscal conservative in 2012, when it was the Tea Party, to all of a sudden when Trump came along, he never even mentioned social conservatism back then. Then when Trump came along, he was a huge culture warrior all of a sudden. And then when Elon Musk came along...
Hardly unique to Charlie Kirk among Republicans.
No, I know that. And then Elon Musk came along, and all of a sudden he's a great replacement theory guy. Like, so a lot of people now going, oh, he's racist because of the stuff he says now. He was saying completely different stuff 3 years ago. And the stuff he's saying now, he's saying because Elon Musk says it. He's just following him. He's basically just a mirror to Republicans. Where are you guys at right now? I'm sticking my finger in the wind, and please donate generously.
But I would say as well that, like, you're framing it all through the lens of donations. But, you know, he in most of the articles I've read, he's described as a MAGA influencer. And influencer to me is the right word in the sense that, you know, he supposedly grew up idolizing Rush Limbaugh. And if you're a young person today who wants to be the next Rush Limbaugh, you don't go to talk radio. You become an online personality with a number of media interests. And, you know, reflecting back the way that the Republican base is feeling is, you know, pretty true of most, if not all, successful Republican media commentators, like Fox News. Like Fox News has been on a journey since 2012.
It has.
And I sort of see it in that vein as sort of, you know, not uniquely. I mean, obviously, like, you know, it's about being successful, making money, but I think it's kind of tied up in, you know, that world of if you are a young conservative, which he was supposedly always conservative growing up, grew up in a conservative family, and you want to be a media star, he followed the path that you would follow. I mean, the thing that is a little bit different is he also had this political organizing arm of his operations that is different from something that, say, you know, Megyn Kelly is doing when she's on a podcast. But yeah, I do think that that is a big part of what his work was.
I'm sure you're right, but Rush Limbaugh never went around trying to take tens of millions of dollars to do registrations in elections.
Yeah.
Like he's
That's what I'm saying. That part is different.
Yeah, he was definitely dipping his toe into the business side of things. Let's put it that way. But having said that, look, I think you make a good point. And in fact, look, there was an article which I saved because I thought it was funny at the time. But the more I reflected on it, I thought, actually, he's probably right. It was by Daily Wire's Michael Knowles, who wrote, I'm going to read this quote. I was going to read this quote as a joke, but, you know, I'm not sure it's a joke anymore. The first thing that comes to my mind, beyond the sadness for his family, for his wife, for his young kids, his millions and millions of admirers and his many friends, is that Charlie Kirk would have been president. Charlie Kirk would have been president. His friends knew it. His many admirers knew it. And his enemies, to whom he was always so gracious, they knew it too. Everyone knew it. He was going to be president. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, God, yeah, Charlie Kirk president. But I thought, hang on. He had a real gift for knowing his audience and for raising money. He could talk well. He was always right in the middle of the base, and he was relentlessly positive. What other skills do you need as a politician?
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever wanted, if he even in the back of his mind thought he ever would run, but I absolutely could have seen him getting the Republican nomination in say 8 years' time.
I mean, he's 31. He has a lot of time to develop in that space.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, I actually think, you know, he could be right. Another thing which I don't think has been covered enough, the right had real issues with him. Like, they did. It's kind of funny hearing the left going about him being some hard rightist because A, he's not, and B, he was often a piñata for the far right. Like Nick Fuentes rose through antagonising Kirk in particular, like calling him a sellout, saying that he was an astroturf for billionaires. Like Nick Fuentes literally rose through the ranks by turning up at Turning Point Q&As and just trolling Charlie Kirk. He thought it was hilarious. And him and his people just kept on doing it over and over again. It was driving Charlie Kirk crazy because he was trying to get rid of them and trying to keep them out. And they kept on dive bombing his Q&As. And he was the guy to torment, especially the last few years since he became like an honorable member of the Trump family. It's been kind of cool on the right to dump on Charlie Kirk. Laura Loomer dumped on him 3 days ago. Like, I got a tweet here. I don't ever want to hear Charlie Kirk claim he's pro-Trump ever again. After this weekend, I'd say he's revealed himself as a political opportunist, and I've had a front row seat to witness the mental gymnastics these last 10 years. Lately, Charlie has decided to behave like a charlatan, claiming to be pro-Trump one day while he stabs Trump in the back the next, and so on. They had a complicated relationship, I feel, with Charlie Kirk and the right. While his ideology wasn't constant, though, there have been two constants during his whole career as far as I'm concerned. Number one, a devotion to debate and free speech and engagement with his opponents, which was rare. And I honestly, but But like I said, I'm not trying to be an asshole here. I'm trying to be honest. Like, that is his biggest positive as far as I'm concerned, by a mile. We don't have enough engagement with our opponents in this society, and he definitely engaged with his opponents. This is a clip doing the rounds at the moment. I think showcases his philosophy quite well.
We record all of it so that we put on the internet so people can see these ideas collide. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens, because you start to think the other side is so evil and they lose their humanity. Marriages break apart when you stop talking, churches fall apart, and I think what makes this country on the verge of going to a place we don't want it to go right now is we're afraid to go to places like this and have these conversations. I'm not.
I don't give him credit for that. I think he genuinely thinks that. I think he genuinely thinks that, and I think there aren't many people who do genuinely think like that these days, and I think we as a society are significantly poorer for that.
Yeah, it was literally in the act of practicing that principle when he was killed.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that is the irony, because I was going to say the other thing that he's been constant on is his love for guns. Like, I'm not being a smart ass. That is his one philosophy: free speech and guns. I mean, the two things that he has been absolutely steady on for 15 years, and he ended up getting shot engaging with people. So it is actually quite ironic. There is a clip going around. I played on Play America, but just in case you don't watch Play America, you guys should hear it. That this is his gun policy. This is what he thinks.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal.
Now, I think it's completely wrong. I think it's a fantasy suggesting that you can protect yourself against the government with a shotgun, and it's easy to be cruel given he just got shot in the neck, like when you see that clip. I'm not being cruel. I think he's wrong, but it is just an irony that should be acknowledged. That guns and free speech, guns and engaging.
Yeah, I have seen people using that quote to kind of dunk on him. And for me, I'm just, I'm going to be consistent in the sense of I don't agree with that position and I am against guns and gun violence. And therefore, I'm also not taking any joy in the fact that he got shot.
Totally. Talking about unfortunate ideology, it actually leads me to my greatest fear about this story, which for all I know, they already have a suspect. I don't know, like a real suspect, not a suspect they're going to let go in 3 hours' time. But if they don't, I just want to just put on the record what I'm most concerned about at the moment. Like, this story's already a tragedy. I'm not going to downplay that. A family's lost their father, lost their husband. A political movement has lost one of their more conciliatory voices, which God knows they need. But it could get a lot worse. This is the question that he was answering when he got shot.
Right, great. So do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years?
Too many.
Okay. It's 5. Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm going to give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
Now, Conservatives have been going on about transgender mass shooters all year. It's been one of their talking points of the year. There have been like 5 transgender shooters in the last few years, basically, which is not a disproportionately huge number overall out of the thousands of shootings there have been in America over that period. Literally thousands. But there have been a disproportionately high number of high-profile shootings. That's the thing, the ones that people remember. And maybe part of the reason they're high profile is because it's a transgender person doing it.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, is there anything essentially high profile about those shootings, or is it just that it becomes a talking point?
I don't know. But it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But it's just a fact that conservatives have this on the brain. I mean, part of the reason those shootings exist is undoubtedly because mass shooters are copycats. Like, they just are. That's one of the pathologies of mass shooters. They copy each other and they build on each other. And so, yeah, some disturbed trans people are probably copycatting other disturbed trans people, just like some disturbed cisgender people copycat other disturbed cisgender people. Disturbed people copycat disturbed people. I'm so hoping that the shooter is not trans. I know there is apparently a picture out of someone or other. Whether that's the person or not or whatever, like, this is the most high-profile shooting of all, and I'm telling you, conservatives are ready to pop on this one. And if this person ends up being trans, and Kirk was shot while answering a question about trans shooters, and the American right, I swear, is going to start demanding that trans people be treated like an inherently dangerous minority. And, oh, God. I mean, they're facing enough discrimination as it is. Discrimination will go off the charts, especially with Trump as president. And Conservatives are already warming up for it. I mean, this is on Fox News. This is Jason Shavitz.
I don't think it was a coincidence that the shot rang out when you get a question about transgender mass shootings. That maybe, hopefully I'm wrong. I'll probably get criticized for jumping to conclusions, but I'm just telling you, in the 30 minutes or so, I thought, wow, I don't think that's a coincidence, but we'll see.
The shooter was almost certainly on the roof. What, they're going to climb up on the roof on the off chance that Charlie Kirk starts talking about transgender people? Come on. It's just so unlikely, but it's not going to stop the discrimination. So I just really hope that's not the case. I'm just praying. Do you have anything to say about anything of this before I get to the second point?
It's just very unlikely the shooter would have known what he was talking about in that moment because the shooter was very far away.
Yeah, the shooter wouldn't have heard them. That's a great point. But I was just thinking that it was taking half an hour for the shooter to get up the top of wherever they were.
That too. But like, I mean, it is a weird coincidence, even based on what we do know, that he got killed as he was being asked about gun violence. But that I can't see how that's not a coincidence because the shooter was quite far away from the arch. I mean, there's loudspeakers, but I find it hard to believe
100
the shooter
meters is a long way away.
And also, like, it's clearly someone who came there that day with a plan.
Yeah.
And so, it just is implausible that they're timing it for an exact moment.
It's not like he's particularly associated with that talking point either. The whole right have been talking about that for ages. The second thing I want to talk about is what we can control during political shootings. This is a general thing. We can't control the shooting. We can't control the tragedy. What we can control is our corner of the internet to not be a haven for dickheads. That's what we can control. It's the only thing we can control. And we're doing a very bad job of it. There was a lot of dickheadry on the internet 2 days ago. And to be fair, I think some people were hurting and they were venting. And you need to allow for that. Like, these are human beings. Like, some people are going to vent. But when something like this happens to someone on your side of politics, there are 3 kinds of unhelpful behaviour I see every time. Doesn't matter what the side of politics is. And so I just wanted to point these out so we can be aware of them the next time this happens. Because sadly, we are entering an era of political violence. Clearly, there is going to be a next time. And the next time is probably going to be sooner than the last time. And the next time after that will be sooner again. So might as well get ready for it. 1, nut picking. Nut picking is when you hand select the biggest loser on the other side of politics and try to make them representative of the whole side. It's the ultimate straw manning, basically. Lots of righties were promoting lefties celebrating Kirk's death. Total dickheads. Both people there. Libs of TikTok spent her entire afternoon scrounging around for Z-grade TikTokers with like 5 followers doing something insensitive. And then she'd promote those people to her millions of followers while screaming about how this meant war because she found some random person being a shithead. Most of these people were dancing to music and celebrating visually rather than verbally, but just for our listeners rather than our viewers, I pulled a couple of examples of people speaking so the listeners could understand, even though these are pretty lame examples, but just to give you a vibe.
There are a lot of people that are like, no matter what side of politics you're on, you should never celebrate something bad happening to someone. I, on the other hand, do cheer when bad things happen to bad people.
Charlie Kirk just got shot.
Well, breaking fucking news, folks. Seems somebody just took a shot at one of the Fantafast's favorite 5-mile-wide mouthpieces, Charles Chucklefuck Kirk.
Okay, you get the vibe. Let's be clear. These people don't represent the entire of the Democratic Party, like presented. Laughing at someone's death is obviously extremely hateful. Spreading those people to millions of viewers is also hateful. It achieves nothing. When you're spreading hatred, even if it's not from your mouth, you're still spreading hatred. So that's what you're doing. You can't deny it. And and what's the value of it? What's the value? What does it add to the world? That these people who no one would have seen until you found them are doing something objectionable. If you ignore them, it's a tree falling in a forest. It doesn't matter. And it only induces hatred from the people watching those videos, right? The TikTokers, they mean nothing until they're elevated, and then they start achieving significance. And all they do is make the world a worse place. Everyone involved in that, especially on a day like that. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, decontextualizing people. This is a favorite. Where you take something fairly inoffensive and standard that someone from the other side said, you remove it from its original context, and then you retweet it and replay it after a tragedy happens, and you act outraged about how that comment is what caused the tragedy to occur. As if. Like, for instance, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy said this the day before the shooting.
Like, we're in a war right now to save this country, and so you have to be willing to do whatever is necessary in order to save the country.
That got sent around so much on Wednesday. Oh, look at that. There's the rhetoric from Democrats. Oh, talking about political war, talking about doing whatever is necessary. That's completely normal political rhetoric that you expect from anyone of any side. It's not even heated. It's nothing. And it's bad faith as well. I just don't think that these people genuinely believe that the shooter saw that and went from that. Yet people were furious about that on Wednesday. So that's the second kind. The third kind is, and this is the one that gets me the most annoyed, is rejecting reconciliation. When someone from the other side says something completely reasonable and commendable, they act like decent human beings, they reach out, they put their politics away for a day. They say something that if someone from your side said exactly the same thing, you'd say thank you for your sentiment. But in this case, you refuse to accept their grace because they're from the other side, and you slap away their outstretched hand because you say they're lying or they're scared or they're a hypocrite or it's too late or something like that. You refuse to let them take the off-ramp, essentially. So, for example, David Hogg tweeted the following. Horrifying news that Charlie Kirk has been shot. Gun violence and political violence have to fucking stop. Charlie, his family, and all the students who had to witness the shooting are in my thoughts. We have disagreements, but we all agree something has to change. There's nothing objectionable there. The comments were wall-to-wall hatred. I've just got a sample here. Your side did this. Fuck you, this is on you. What has to change is the left. You guys stir this kind of thing up. If you can't see that, you're part of the problem. You want to change something? Look in the mirror. Your pay is responsible for this. Shame on you. It just goes on and on and on. There are almost no positive comments. Almost every single one of them is like that. What's the end game here? If there's no off-ramps for anyone, how do things improve? I imagine some people do it for the clicks. Some people do it because they're angry. Some people are venting. Some people are just energized by hate. There might be other reasons as well. I'm sure they've all got their own reasons. But it's not just anonymous commenters doing it either. It's big people doing it as well. It's so easy to give into the hate in moments like this. For instance, I've just got a whole collection here for you. But all of these I'm reading out are people before they know who the shooter is. We still don't know who the shooter is. Elon Musk. The left is the party of murder. Laura Loomer. It's time for the Trump administration to shut down, defund, and prosecute every single leftist organisation. If Charlie Kirk dies from his injuries, his life cannot be in vain. We must shut these lunatic leftists down once and for all. The left is a national security threat. Andrew Tate, of all people. The left are evil, murdering scum who kill people or let others kill people. They must be held accountable, says credibly accused rapist Andrew Tate. And getting on this moral high horse about other people. Right-wing podcast host Joey Manorino. The Democratic Party must be classified as a domestic terror organisation and their members and leaders treated accordingly. Enough is enough. Pro-Trump journalist Nick Sauter. The left has declared literal war on us. Democrats and their violent rhetoric own this. And so on. I'm not nitpicking here. Right? I'm not saying these guys are representative of all the right. They're representative only themselves. But you see a lot of it. And that is not helpful. This was all before, I repeat, we knew if it was even a political shooting. These people are acting like the argument they're engaged in can be won. And if they win it, the other side just gets vaporized into thin air and disappears. That's not going to happen. They're going to be there tomorrow. Both sides are going to be there tomorrow. What you're actually doing is you're pissing in the pool that you drink from. That is what you are doing when you do this. It's not healthy at all. And do you have any comments on this before I go on to Trump?
I think what drives it is the outrage is addictive, and algorithms on social media encourage our worst impulses in this respect. But, you know, when you're asking, like, what are people hoping to get out of this? Like, they want to be mad. It's why, like, when the right went off Twitter initially and were looking for other places, they found it dissatisfying when there weren't enough lefties on the right-wing sites to fight with, because people get a thrill out of, not everyone, but a lot of people who engage in this kind of rhetoric online get a thrill out of being angry at stuff like that. And I understand that, because I kind of there's a part of me that sometimes, if someone texts me, I'm not getting into fights on social media, but if someone texts me something that outrages me, you just get this kind of rush of, it's probably not dopamine, but some kind of feeling of feeling fired up. And I think a lot of people just don't ever take a step back from that and kind of recognize you don't want to be consumed by it. And so they do get consumed by it, and they're not looking for rapprochement with people they disagree with. And this is not just, I'm not just talking of the right, I'm talking of people in general who are of this sort of disposition. They go looking for things to be mad about. They want to feel mad. They might not consciously be thinking about it that way, but that is the way that they behave in these spaces.
No, I'm sure you're right. They enjoy the catharsis. I'm sure you're absolutely right. And look, it's not like I don't know what it's like to have a moment where you're feeding on your anger. Totally. But I'll tell you this. The reason I'm bringing this up is not because I want to kick Laura Loomer. The reason I'm bringing this up is to discuss with the Peppers. Because we're all in this situation too often, and we're going to be in it more often. And so let me just tell you, if you're not aware of this, you probably are, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be listening to PEP. But let's face it. but the fact is, as satisfying as it might be for a moment to vent and to get yourself all steamed up, you always feel better when someone takes the off ramp. When either you or the person you're angry at takes the off ramp, and you can just move on. You're always better off. You always feel better in hindsight.
Totally. It's not to go all RFK, but it's like junk food. It feels good the moment you have it, and it feels bad in the long run for your body and soul. Yeah. I don't think that it's a good thing. But I just think, to me, these sort of cultural forces are big enough at this moment that I just see no chance that this issue is getting better before it gets worse. It will get better in the long arc of history, but not anytime soon.
No, I agree. We've seen this. History suggests that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And it will get better. It will get better, but it'll get worse first. Given how unhealthy this feeding on anger is and not reaching out and all the rest of it, this is why I was really pleased to hear Trump say this. I thought magnificent. Let's listen to Trump's speech. I thought this was marvelous diplomacy and impressive leadership, I felt.
It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible.
See, that's very big, very mature. Surprisingly, I thought, from Trump, very big of the guy. He's stepping back from the brink. He's saying, look, I've gone too far. Maybe he's about to apologize for the first time because of the way he's been going in the past. And I really appreciate that. Turning over a new leaf, really seeing a standard. Oh, hang on, the clip continues. sorry, there's more clip. Lucky, place the next bit.
What's he gonna say?
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
Obviously not a lot of self-awareness there from Trump. Look at me being a $2 store Jon Stewart there. I couldn't help myself. I just couldn't believe just how perfectly he went from just saying exactly the right thing to, if you just unfreeze it, you go, and that's exactly the wrong thing. Well done. Look, yeah, I don't think that was a big surprise to any of us. But Was he threatening to go after people's freedom of speech at the end then? I'm like, oh, God, what's he doing? Obviously, that's incredibly hypocritical and shows, no self-awareness. But Elizabeth Warren put the ridiculous situation quite well, I must admit. When she was asked about the left toning down their rhetoric, she made the point in a much more Elizabeth Warren-ish way.
Oh, please. Right, why don't you start with the President of the United States, right? And every ugly meme he has posted and every ugly word.
Yeah, look, all because she's right doesn't mean that's going to fix anything, sadly, for the reasons we've just been talking about. The whole thing is just so unhealthy. Look, I'm going to leave you on this topic with a positive message, and you can add anything you like, and then we'll move on. This is a genuinely positive message. I'm not being dime store John Stewart now. It's from Luther Ray Abel at National Review. He's Christian. I'm not. He spoke unsurprisingly in spiritual terms just after someone was shot. You might not be Christian as well. Let's just leave that's not relevant to this bit. But just the thought, I think, is spot on, which was, we find ourselves once again in a time when salvation feels distant. Despair is attractive. Caustic blame and condemnation are momentarily cathartic. But there is nothing more perilous than allowing ourselves these things, as Job could tell us. Civilization, this interdependent structure of support and trust, cannot be abandoned. We must keep the faith. We must hold the line. We must hold the line is the thought I've got. It's not easy, but there's no other option. It just gets worse if you don't. So, you got anything to add, Melina, on any of this?
No, that's a good thought to end on.
Okay, all right. Look, I talked a bit there. Took more than I thought I was going to. So why don't we go to your topic? Why don't we go to RFK?
Yes, I'm back to talking about RFK again.
I'm sorry. This is like Elle in Ukraine. Every single time we get you on, it's, hey, Melina, RFK. You just happen to be here when RFK's in the news every time.
Yeah, to be fair, I also do find him one of the more compelling figures in the administration because some of the things he says, I'm like, oh, that's maybe a good point. That's maybe interesting. And then he does so many terrible things as well. So that kind of tension does interest me. So to be fair, it's a little bit on me too. But basically, he is in the news. Yeah. Last week, he faced a hearing in the Senate.
Yep.
That was ostensibly about Trump's 2026 budget proposal.
Okay.
But in reality, it became largely about vaccines.
I thought it was about screaming. Yeah. That was like a wrestling contest for a while there.
And his firing of the CDC director, Susan Menares.
Yes.
It was a very combative hearing on both sides, as you are alluding to.
Yes.
People have really noted his demeanor in particular as being very aggressive for a witness in a Senate hearing.
Certainly more aggressive than his confirmation hearing.
Imagine that. Just to give a bit of a tenor of the back and forth, Senator Ron Wyden, who's a Democrat, said,
I hope that you will tell the American people how many preventable child deaths are an acceptable sacrifice for enacting an agenda that I think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I get a reply? Or Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening?
And this is the kind of thing, just broadly, before we go into some more specifics, that I'm talking about when I say it infuriates me about RFK, because I hear just his response in isolation to everything else that's going on. And I think, it is great to be talking about that. That's a fair knock. It is a terrible problem that chronic disease has increased so much and is so high in American children.
In a rich country.
Yeah. Yeah. And politicians should be talking about it and should be treating it like a crisis that deserves to be given attention and resources to improve. And so, fair enough, knock them for not doing enough in that space. It is shameful to have ignored it. Except he is also functionally ignoring it by fixating on vaccines, which is something that is just going to make sick Americans even sicker. It's not doing anything to help with chronic diseases if you pay attention to science. I mean, it's like if I went around just like shooting kids in the feet, And then people were like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you shooting children in the feet? And I'm like, well, you've sat by while kids have gotten sicker with chronic disease for 25 years. So what do you have to say for yourself? It's like, sure. Yeah. But it doesn't then follow that I'm helping them with the actions that I'm taking just because I've identified a separate problem.
Yes.
And I just feel like I do find it so frustrating because if he was making chronic disease his priority and using evidence-based approaches to doing that and steering resources towards things that we have some reason to believe are going to help with that, then that would be a great thing. And maybe that's what they would be talking about in the hearing. But instead, he's restricting access to vaccines and firing health experts. And so that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. That's what the news is talking about. That's what politicians are talking about. They're not talking about helping the chronic disease issues for kids because of the actions that he's clearly prioritizing that are unjustified in the vaccine space. So, I mean, that's my sort of general frustration with the whole hearing and the way he approaches these issues. But let's get into some of the specific interesting things that happen in the hearing as well. Particularly a number of senators, including Republican senators like Bill Cassidy, tried to pit RFK against Trump. They were kind of quite aggressive in some of their questioning.
I said yesterday, I believe it, that President Trump deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed. If he had been President Obama, he would have gotten it. But because of Operation Warp Speed, forcing the federal government to come to a vaccine development within 10 months when others said it couldn't be done, we saved millions of lives globally, trillions of dollars, we reopened economies, an incredible accomplishment. Mr. Secretary, do you agree with me that the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. That was phenomenal.
Let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Wait,
that was a statement.
I did not say that.
Okay, then let me ask, because you also...
Senator, I just want to make clear, I did not say that.
We'll check the record. That's a question of fact. You also said that you were also, as lead attorney for the Children's Health Defense, you engaged in multiple lawsuits attempting to restrict access to the COVID vaccine. Again, it surprises me that you think so highly of Operation Warp Speed when, as an attorney, you attempted to restrict access. Now, let me ask.
I'm happy to explain why.
I had 3 minutes and 30 seconds left. It also surprises me because you've canceled, or HHS did, but apparently under your direction, $500 million in contracts using the mRNA vaccine platform that was critical to Operation Warp Speed. Again, an accomplishment that I think President Trump should get a Nobel Prize for. You canceled $500 million in contracts. Now, I grew up in a middle-class family, so $500 million seems, just to cancel, it seems like an incredible waste of money. But it also seems like a commentary upon what the president was attempting, what the president did in Operation Warp Speed, which is to create a platform by which to create vaccines. So this just seems inconsistent that you would agree with me the president deserves a tremendous amount of credit for this.
And spoiler for those who are listening to that, it does turn out in the end that RFK is Bill Cassidy's father. I think he might have had a cold that day, RFK, with the breathing. But anyway.
So we should just, to remind people, note that Bill Cassidy is the Republican doctor from Louisiana who was the crucial vote in getting RFK confirmed in the first place, despite his public concerns that vaccine access would be undermined, concerns that were very obviously going to pan out to be correct.
Yeah. He also had concerns about facing a primary in 2026, and those concerns,
which is happening anyway.
Sadly, yes. Yeah. Those fears were also pan out.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously, like, trying to be very clever there. It knows the way to Trump's heart is advocating for him to win a Nobel Prize. I assume he'd be just as happy with a Nobel Prize for presumably medicine as one for peace.
Yes. Yes.
But I mean, let's just take a moment to be unimpressed by Bill Cassidy, because he sold his soul to keep his seat, which he might lose anyway. And now he's trying to buy it back with some tricky gotcha questions. Like, the time to make a difference if you cared about public health was before he was confirmed. Now it is incredibly obvious, both in RFK's actions and demeanor in this hearing that he does not give a shit about what the senators think of him and what he's doing. So too late.
For the record, by the way, you know that first bit where he said to Kennedy, you just said to Senator what's his name from Colorado, whatever, Senator Bennett, that more people died from the COVID vaccine than died from COVID, and Kennedy said, I did not say that. So we'll look at the record. I looked at the record. He didn't say it. Bill Cassidy completely verbal them. What he said was, some people died from the COVID vaccine, which I actually think that is probably true, that some people did die from myocarditis. Not many, but some did, on single digits. But whether you agree with that or not, that's very different from saying more people died from the COVID vaccine than the actual disease.
Yes.
But it just goes to show how desperate he was to play hardball. They were happy to verbal him. He wasn't even waiting for his answers. He was just talking over the top of him. He was being a bit of a smart ass, which is, as you say, a far cry from where he was a few months back.
Yes, and it's going to make zero difference because it's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late to stop any of this. The damage is done, and it's just, trying to kind of regain some sense of pride in oneself after you've just completely, sold out. Look, to be fair, I understand it's not a small thing to be like, give up your job for your principles. Like, I understand that like most people probably wouldn't, and in various contexts. And it's, it's not like, I don't want to be flippant by being like, well, you should have just let yourself get primary. But at the same time, like, what are you in politics for if you're going to sell out like things that you genuinely believe in? And are going to risk lives. Like, people use that hyperbole so much. People are going to die. But, like, this actually is life-threatening stuff. And it's going to be pointless anyway because he's still being primaried and he's still probably going to lose. Like,
and he's a doctor.
You got to draw a line somewhere.
He doesn't need the job.
Yeah.
Like, he's a doctor. He makes more money if he's not a politician. Like, so what? There's no incentives for him to act like that. It's just depressing.
Yes.
Did you see, I don't know if you're about to go here, but did you see about the memo?
Oh, the poll?
The poll?
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Okay, good. Okay, you go there. That's right. I won't jump in there. Well, I'll set you up. I'll say he wasn't the only person who was going down this path.
Yes.
Barrasso, who also is a doctor, who didn't act like a doctor 6 months ago, also they said all the right things now. Like, in your confirmation hearing, you promised to uphold the highest standards for vaccines. Since then, I've grown deeply concerned, etc. So you can take it from there.
Yeah, so it is notable. A few Republicans, as you say, had to go along these lines. That RFK came ready to fight on the issue of vaccines. But it is notable that ahead of the hearing, Republicans were shown a poll that showed the majority of Trump voters support vaccines, believing they save lives and that they support immunizations against measles and Hep B. And just a few sort of specific details. Respondents said they placed their greatest trust in doctors and nurses when it comes to vaccine information, including 76% of Trump voters.
Yep.
About 73% of Trump voters and 83% of swing voters agreed that vaccines save lives. The poll did show a separation on COVID vaccines specifically.
Yep.
So for Trump voters, while they support most vaccines, only 22% said it was important for people to get the COVID shots. But the overall takeaway from the poll was Republicans in general and Trump Republicans specifically still broadly support vaccines. And obviously RFK has not just been undermining COVID vaccines in his time in this role. So that's a bright spot in terms of, there's still some resilience in terms of positive attitudes to vaccines, but no points for bravery for the politicians. Like, the state of leadership in 2025 is that politicians need a poll before they'll publicly take the position that life-saving vaccines are good.
That is sadly an accurate way of looking at it. I just throw in just two more numbers that I wrote down as well, which was you mentioned qualitatively that they weren't so hot on the Trump voters weren't so hot on the COVID vaccine, but the other vaccines that were. Just the number I wrote down was the 77% of Trump voters supported the MMR vaccine. And the other thing which I wrote down, there's a phrase there: vaccine recommendations should be advised by the physicians, scientists, and public health experts trained in the medical and scientific fields that understand vaccine risks and benefits. 81% of Trump voters agreed with that. And that is very much what's not happening at the moment in the HHS.
Yes.
So, yes. Anyway, so yeah, take it away. Keep going.
The other main point of contention in the hearing was on the firing of Menares, the CDC director.
Yep.
So the thing which stood out there was when RFK was asked about firing her, who she'd only been confirmed a month ago. He said he had a meeting with her where he asked her, "Are you a trustworthy person?" And she said no, so he fired her.
Tell the head of the CDC that if she refused to sign off on your changes to the childhood vaccine schedule, that she had to resign.
No, I told her that she had to resign because I asked her, "Are you a trustworthy person?" And she said no. So if you had an employee who told you they weren't trustworthy, would you ask them to resign, Senator?
So I'm sorry, but this is not what she has said publicly. She has said
I'm not surprised about that.
So you're saying she's lying?
Yes.
I know you had a bit of a laugh about that exchange, Melina, but you might think it's impossible to imagine someone saying that they were untrustworthy and then being fired. But I feel like what we just saw there was RFK Jr. telling us that he's untrustworthy with this blatant lie about what happened with Menares.
Yes. Her lawyers have called his description of that event as patently ridiculous, and I'm inclined to think they're right. Like, if he's suggesting that that's verbatim how the conversation went, that is insane. Nobody speaks that way.
No.
Like, no. See ya. Like, it just literally doesn't make sense. And if he's paraphrasing, then he should tell us specifically what the conversation was.
Yeah.
He's testifying before the Senate. It's time to be specific with what actually happened.
Yes. Although notably, he wasn't put under oath when Wyden asked for him to be put under oath.
Do you want to explain that?
You don't have to be put under oath when you're testifying to the Senate. It's a choice that they make whether you're going to have to be put under oath or not. And for whatever reason, the Republicans chose to not require that RFK puts himself under oath.
Well, it's usually taken for granted that presidential cabinet members then usually not sworn in because it's taken for granted that they will be truthful. So it was a pointed insult that the Democrats asked him to go under oath.
Yeah, Wyden made a bit of a deal because Wyden said, the guy has gone on the record and lied many times before. I hate to have to do this, but
I hate to have to do it.
And the chair was saying, "Well, you're not going to do it." And they were very polite about it. Unlike the rest of the hearing, they were quite polite when this happened. But no, he wasn't under oath.
Yes. I mean, Kennedy in his confirmation hearings promised, "I will do nothing as HHS secretary that makes it difficult or discourages people from taking vaccines." So, yeah, let's just say I don't find him a very credible or trustworthy person.
No. Can I ask you then on this topic, but not on the hearing? Something I found really interesting. This is a question about notice. I know there's a nice setup, okay? So she might have nothing to say. Just before this hearing, the Florida Surgeon General, Ladapo, it was almost like almost a religious rally. Like it was a real hallelujah vibe about it. Like where they were all going crazy while he was saying there will be no vaccine mandates ever, none whatsoever, none, zero, none. Like he was being very excited about it, and that was the background of this particular Senate hearing as well. Like people going, is this where we're going? Is this next? Because that's what they're doing in Florida. Is that what RFK is about to do? Trump was asked about this, and his reaction, I thought, was really interesting. Like, it seemed to me, I felt like we were seeing his actual opinion here rather than what he does for political purposes. I might be wrong. I might be kidding myself here, but have a look.
Can I ask you another Florida question? The vaccine mandates that were rolled back for school children, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we have to be very careful. Look, you have some vaccines that are so amazing. The polio vaccine, I happen to think, is amazing. A lot of people think that COVID is amazing. You know, there are many people that believe strongly in that. But you have some vaccines that are so incredible. And I think you have to be very careful when you say that some people don't have to be vaccinated. It's a very tough position. So I'd give you an answer. I'll give you a feeling, but just initially I heard about it yesterday, and it's a tough stance. Look, you have vaccines that work. They just pure and simple work. They're not controversial at all. And I think those vaccines should be used. Otherwise, some people are going to catch it, and they endanger other people. And when you don't have controversy at all, I think people should take it.
It seemed to me, I've really felt like that was a very authentic answer from Trump there. Like when he doesn't have to deal with controversy because he's talking generalities and stuff. His answer made sense. Like a lot of his answers don't. Like that one actually made sense. It was very logical. His vocab is obviously very limited, but just logically speaking, it just seemed to actually flow and just seem natural in a way that I go, shit, that's his actual opinion for once. And it was very pro-vaccine. I mean, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's been noted by a lot of people that he is in a tough spot with the COVID vaccine specifically because he has these competing interests where he wants to take credit for something he legitimately should take credit for. Like, totally. It is the biggest achievement of his presidency, and it's an amazing thing. And like, he's not the scientist that figured out these vaccines, but he put the money and resources into making it happen. Credit where credit's due, and I think it annoys him.
Credit for that stuff.
Yeah, give him a Nobel Prize. But I think it does annoy him that he can't take credit for it. And he has talked about it, like explicitly in interviews. Talked about the fact that some people think it's good, but other people don't, and I can't really talk about it. Like he's acknowledged effectively that his base has shut him down from taking credit for something, and he loves taking credit for things. So there's the sort of complex relationship he has with the COVID vaccine specifically. There have been suggestions over the years of him genuinely flirting with the vaccines and autism thing. I guess that's just one vaccine. So maybe, he mentions polio a couple of times, which is different. So maybe he has some, interest in that conspiracy theory specifically for MMR, maybe not. But I mean, it makes sense that, he's grown up in an era where vaccines are uncontroversially great, and he would be vaccinated. His kids would have been vaccinated. His grandkids would have been vaccinated. So, it doesn't surprise, like his position is a mainstream position.
Yeah.
It's shared with the majority of his voters, the majority of Americans. So it sort of makes sense to me that he would be in line with that. And I agree with you, the way he's speaking there that doesn't kind of have, sometimes, he's notorious for being persuaded by the last person he's spoken to, but he's speaking about that in a way that doesn't sound like he's cribbing off someone else's opinion in his ear. So yeah, I think you're probably right that he's speaking honestly, but I think he has also had a bit of a muddled view at times, or temptation to be led by less qualified voices in this space, shall we say.
So do you... What's your take of where America's at then with this? I mean, because before these polls came out, before we heard Trump say that, like I would have thought maybe they're just irretrievably screwed on the vaccine front, but maybe they just got an RFK problem, and if Trump just gets the balls to sack the guy, problem's gone.
Well, I don't think it is just an RFK problem, because you have Florida taking away mandates. So, that's already an example of it spreading beyond RFK specifically. And those mandates do make a difference. California used to have very broad exemptions for vaccines, and then they tightened it after a measles outbreak years ago, and their rates have gone up considerably since. So it does make a difference in terms of the overall rate, and you don't need to get much lower from where the rate is currently before you start getting into problems of being herd immunity, not herb immunity. So, I do think that, if you get to a situation where it's like, 3/4 or 80% of people are vaccinated, most, people are not going to die of measles. It's not going to be like COVID before we had vaccines, but you will get more outbreaks. And the tragedy of that, and the reason the argument for mandates in the first place, is that there will be people who are unvaccinated, not by their own choice, who are going to be vulnerable to those outbreaks.
By the way, I feel like, it's not really relevant to what we're talking about, but I feel like I should just say this because I don't say it often. And I feel like I feel like a hypocrite. They don't say it, and that is my actual view on all this kind of stuff. I often actually just keep my view to myself. You might not realize that because I just have a lot of opinions, but I just give opinions about what the news is rather than about my actual political views. I kind of understand where the no mandates people were coming from. I know I'm a libertarian, so what a surprise. But just like if I was pragmatism always battles with ideology for me on this kind of stuff. And at the bottom of the line is if lots of people are going to die because of ideology, they shouldn't. And so, I just swallow hard and just have the mandate if I needed to. Like if it was some seriously deadly disease or something. But I feel like as a leader, what I would love to see is a leader who encourages heavily people to take vaccines for all the right reasons, invest money in education campaigns, invest money in advertising campaigns, does everything they can to get people to choose vaccination, but doesn't make them. Because I just feel like as soon as you start making people do things, apart from the fact that I just don't ideologically like it, I just feel like when you get people's back up, it's just you're just always rolling the dice that there's going to be a backlash somewhere down the road. Whereas if you can just lead them by the hand, not everyone's going to do it, but enough will do it that you still get herd immunity. Like I'm not denying herd immunity for God's sake, but and so that's where I go to the pragmatic element. If after doing everything you can, you're still looking at 88% or something that's just not good enough, then I'd probably go the mandates. But depending on how deadly the disease is, obviously. But I understand the Ladapo mindset. I just don't understand why he rejects science. That's what I don't understand. But I understand the libertarian mindset of not forcing. Like when he says things like, "It's none of my business to force you to what you put into your children's blood." I totally get that. Like they could be a hell of a lot more encouraging in vaccines than they are. Let's just say. Yeah,
I would say also, to be honest, like I understand that too, and I understand why people bristle about being told that they have to take a medication, broadly speaking, or you have to put something, in their body because the government says so. I would say, and like this is I'm making a very sweeping statement because it is different in every state, but there are exceptions to, it's not like you have to have a vaccine or you go to jail anywhere in America. There are, restrictions on certain kinds of activities, but you still ultimately, in most, if not all states, are not held back from things like schools and stuff. So really, I think the mandates are not, a government law that's literally forcing you to do something above your strenuous objections. It's a very strong encouragement and signal from the government, which I think is kind of what you are talking about. Yeah. I think the more you pair that with making access easy, the better. Like, I think things like policies like, offering vaccines at schools, things like that are great ideas where you just make it as frictionless as possible for people who don't have an objection, but just for whatever reason, maybe it's not their front of mind priority and maybe they're not going to a doctor and getting nudged by their doctor at the appropriate time. Anything like that you can do to help, I think, is better than trying to force people who strongly object. But I also think it's not necessarily correct to sort of say mandates are forcing people to do something that they fundamentally don't want to do. And the other issue I have, obviously, is anyone who's arguing against vaccines and mandates based on misinformation about vaccines. And that is where most of the resistance comes from. Most of the resistance is not about autonomy and a well-founded concern, but about autism and things that are just thoroughly disproven and lies that are spread in the media and online. And so I think we should be heavily resistant to tipping our hat to those people and being like, you do whatever you want. I think there's value in pushing back against the reasons when the reasons are bad, even if the principle of the government shouldn't ultimately force you to do something is sound in some way. These are wise words. And and when you're talking about the mandate that's not really a mandate, the first thing that came to me is like they force you to get a vaccine like Australia forces you to vote, which I know all about. While we talk Epstein. Sure. Okay, so we haven't talked about Epstein for a while, so there's a few things from the past that we need to bring up. First of all, the discharge petition.
Congress were back 2 weeks ago now. You can see how old this section is for me. And Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie immediately took up where they left off on trying to organise a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. For those who don't know, the House Speaker determines what bills come up for a vote on the House floor. If he refuses to bring your bill up for a vote, if you can get a majority of the House reps to sign what they call a discharge petition, it forces the bill up for a vote. Even if the Speaker doesn't want it, it goes over the Speaker's head. Obviously, the bill's likely to then be passed because you got majority support for the discharge petition. Okay. The bill in question here would force the Justice Department to release any Justice Department or FBI documents relating to the case of Epstein within 30 days. Now, in reality, that's what it was supposed to do. In reality, of course, it will do nothing. And the reason why is because there is zero chance that the Senate will vote for it and less than zero chance that Trump will then sign the bill, which he would need to do for it to become a law. But, so, obviously it's purely symbolic and will just put more pressure on Trump to stop trying to block everything, which he is trying to do in the subtlest possible way. But, yeah, this is the realm they're playing in. They're playing in the symbolic realm. So they're going for the symbolism here.
And they're trying to put people on the record.
Yeah, totally, yeah. So far, they're assuming they've got 212 Democrats. They also have Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace. That's quite a bunch. All committing to supporting it. Marjorie Taylor Greene was actually the second Republican behind Thomas Massie last month. She says she's taking some heat for it, although, amusingly, she doesn't blame the president for the heat. Can't be the president.
Oh, I got a lot of pushback. I got phone call after phone call last night. They didn't want me to sign the discharge petition. They want to focus on the oversight investigation. They hate Thomas Massie more than they can hate any Democrat, which makes no sense to me. And they don't want to work with Democrats at all. But again, I'll say this. I'm not blaming President Trump whatsoever. I'm actually blaming some of his staff around him. Eric, you and I both know any president is insulated and in a cone of information based on the people that work directly with him. And I don't think they've informed him on what a big deal this really is.
Sure. The president has no idea that this is a big deal for some of his supporters. No one's told him. Anna Paulina Luna has her own Epstein docs bill, and she says she may support this one, maybe. Don't know about that because there was a special election the other day, which means that I think they only need one more Republican. So Anna Paulina Luna could be it. She hasn't signed on yet. Also, I wouldn't be relying on Nancy Mace for anything. She blows pretty hot and cold, does Nancy Mace. Okay, so anything you want to say so far before we go on? No? Okay. How Trump's trying to kill it. Mike Johnson is trying to provide them with cover, the people voting against it, by putting forward his own bill, his own Epstein bill, which he says does the same thing. Not quite. What it actually does is rather than ordering the Department of Justice to present all the documents involving the Epstein files, what it does instead is order the Oversight Committee to continue its ongoing investigation into the possible mismanagement of the federal government's investigation of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein and Miss Ghislaine Maxwell. It's saying to the House Oversight Committee, good job, pat on the back, keep going.
It's nice to get positive reinforcement.
I'm sure that will inspire them. And it won't force the Justice Department to release anything. So I'd say a slightly different bill, but Mike Johnson says, no, they do pretty much the same thing. Pretty much the same thing. So just support my bill. Trump is continuing on with his tactic to change the topic wherever he possibly can. You might recall few months back when this first broke, how he tried to answer every Epstein question by changing the topic to Russiagate. He's got a new version of that.
So what they're trying to do with the Epstein hoax is get people to talk about that instead of speaking about the tremendous success like ending 7 wars. I ended 7 wars. Nobody's going to talk about because they're going to talk about the Epstein whatever.
It's quite funny that they seriously tried to argue for a while there that the Gabbard Russiagate story was literally the biggest scandal of all time. Literally all time. And a month later, they've completely forgotten it ever existed, and they're trying to make something instead out of Trump's "I solved 7 wars" talking point, instead of the biggest scandal of all time, according to them. Fox News, they're also trying to ignore it. Over the past 3 weeks, Fox has mentioned Epstein 429 times compared to 3,668 times on CNN and 5,624 times on MSNBC. Surprised they mentioned it that many, 429. And the White House is whipping against it. White House statement said, helping Thomas Massie and Liberal Democrats with their attention seeking while the DOJ is fully supporting a more comprehensive file release effort from the Oversight Committee would be viewed as a very hostile act to the administration. And Marjorie Taylor Greene did not like that at all. This is her response to both talking points.
It's not a hoax because Jeffrey Epstein is a convicted pedophile. That takes away the whole hoax things. It's not a hoax. It's not a lie. And on that note, Eric, every Republican should be able to sign on to this. And that's the real hoax, that they're afraid to sign on to it because somebody who is a real coward from one of the Trump admin officials came out and called this a hostile act against the Trump administration. And I take very big offense to that because I put my life and my fortune on the line fighting to get that man elected. And whoever said that has their job because of people like me that fought all the horrible Republicans that stabbed him in the back after January 6th. And I was one of those that fought on the front lines and said, no, he is the leader of our party. He is the president, and we're going to make him president again. Well, that coward attacked me and attacked anybody else and called it a hostile act. The hostile act was Jeffrey Epstein raping 14-year-old girls. That was the hostile act, and it's not a hoax.
She's not backing down, Melina.
Yeah, she's, to be fair to her, been pretty consistent on this issue.
She really has. She really has. And now she's got some help from the survivors, who becoming central figures in this whole episode. The House Oversight Committee met 10 of them, and then the day after they had their own press conference with Massie and Cannery and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And this was, in my view, this was kind of like a new beginning for the story, the survivors, because not only does this take away the Republicans' favourite talking point of, these are all Democrat hypocrites. You know, the hypocrites, they said nothing when they were in power, and now look at them. Well, there's nothing hypocritical or political about these women, that's for sure. It also takes away the Republicans' second favourite talking point, which is, we can't release the files. Think about the victims. Think about their privacy. And then you got the victims coming out going, no, release the files. So it takes away their two talking points. And and they were, and also there's so many of them, they can spread right across all the networks at once, and they're all pretty good speakers. Like some of them also are Republicans who are appealing specifically to Trump for acknowledgement, which is interesting.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
And this is another one, Jenna Lisa Jones.
I voted for Trump. And for him to say what he is saying is beyond me because I put my hope in him and he's supposed to protect us. And for him to say that this is a joke and that it's sides, this is not sides. We will say it time and time again. None of us are up there accusing him of anything. There is no one that is accusing him of any wrongdoing. So for the fact that he is saying those things and saying it's a hoax, who are you hiding for then? Because if it's not you, then who is it? And that scares me. Who is it?
One of their lawyers, Brad Edwards, took it further, and he said that back in 2009, Trump actually helped their investigation of Jeffrey Epstein. And so he found it odd that Trump has a new tone.
I don't understand why it's a hostile act. I can tell you that I talked to President Trump back in 2009, and several times after that, he didn't think that it was a hoax then. In fact, he helped me. He got on the phone. He told me things that were helping our investigation. Now, our investigation wasn't looking into him, but he was helping us then. He didn't treat this as a hoax.
Interesting Freudian slip, saying Clinton for a second there. Mike Johnson took that concept and ran with it. He, at one point, suggested Trump was an FBI informant. And then the next day, he was like pedaling back, retracting as fast as he possibly could. Some of them spoke about Trump. Chantal Davies said that Epstein bragged about his powerful friends, including Trump. In fact, she said Epstein's friendship with Trump was his biggest brag. She said Epstein had an 8x10 framed picture of Trump and Epstein on his desk and that they were very close. Not that it's got anything to do with Trump. That's Epstein. And then one survivor, Lisa Phillips, said that she and other survivors, plan to release a list of those involved in the abuse.
Several of us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list of names. Yes. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details on that.
I don't know what that means. They'll make a private list? Are they going to release the list? I don't quite understand if they keep it to themselves just for them or what. I mean, it's confusing, but I will say this. If they do want to release it, they're going to have some friends. Because Marjorie Taylor Greene is real happy to help them out.
I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women. I can do that for them. And I'd be proud to do it.
Thomas Massey also said the same thing. He'd be happy to read the names out in the House floor. Either way, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of some of these women over the next few weeks, I suspect. Melina, what are your thoughts about the survivors?
I just basically agree with everything you said. It's good that they're speaking out if that's what they want to do. You know, I mean, there may still be, you know, I think Epstein had a lot of victims, so there may still be many women in the files who don't want to be identified. So that is a tricky area, but it's certainly not an issue that's going away. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of, it's become very politicized, like so many things. And, you know, Democrats now pushing for the release of the files are clearly trying to score points off Trump. And so I think it is good and brave of the victims to speak up and try to reclaim the story and make it about them, so it isn't just about cheap partisan point scoring, because there are lots of legitimate questions. You know, you have a very powerful person who was enabled by other powerful people and powerful institutions. There's been a lot of reporting recently about Epstein's relationship with JP Morgan, the bank, which is interesting. So these are good questions and valid questions in the public interest to be exploring. But yeah, I'm heartened at the idea of recentering the actual victims, and so it doesn't become just a political circus, which I think does a disservice to the people who are actually the people at the heart of this story.
Yeah. You mentioned about the pressure to release files. Trump and Johnson have made a lot out of the 33,295 pages of Epstein-related documents have already been released by the Justice Department. Except according to Democratic Representative Robert Garcia, 97% of those documents have already been released before, most of them in Pam Bondi's infamous binders earlier in the year. That didn't impress anyone. Apparently the only new material was some of the data from Epstein's private jet locations, and a lot of that jet material was redacted anyway. So they're just re-releasing the same crap over and over again. And they're filled with redactions. Massey apparently at one point in time held up his phone to show one of the flight log documents that was 100% redacted. This is what I'm dealing with. Massey said, what's clear is they're not redacting just to protect victims, they're redacting to protect reputations. Some of those people are probably innocent, but some of them are most certainly guilty. Amongst the documents they released, for a second time is the prison video that we talked about a few peps back. The prison video from the night Epstein died. Remember how how we talked about the missing minute, which Pam Bondi said was in every prison video. How every night the video's reset. And I said that CBS reported that was a lie. The video they just re-released has 2 extra hours on it, and it does not have the missing minute. It doesn't reveal much, but what it reveals is that Pam Bondi's a liar. That's what it reveals. We knew that before. And the other interesting object that's emerged from the subpoena was the Epstein birthday book, which was obviously the story of last week. Do you have thoughts about the birthday book?
This is just a thing that lots of people have noted, but it's worth us noting here as well that, Epstein's love of young women is a recurring theme throughout the whole book, not just Trump's page. And that just speaks to the fact that his proclivities and crimes were the most notable thing about him to most of his close friends. And so the idea that anyone didn't know what was going on it was already not credible, and that just speaks further to that, broadly speaking.
Look, I don't know why I'm being fed Epstein of all people, but
I understand you could say, oh, maybe they all thought they were all 18-year-olds.
Yeah,
but, I get that. I'm just
it's creepy and pervy and disgusting if he's into 20-year-olds as well when he's 55 or whatever. But and you could see them making jokes about that.
I'm not saying everyone knew the full extent of all of his crimes. I'm just saying his general behavior was clearly not a secret. And it's not, when we saw Trump's entry in the book, that was sort of speaking to that, and that was noted. And it just is further notable that many of his associates were very aware that this was his general thing. Yeah. No, there's no doubt that it seems to them that if I have to say one thing on Jeffrey Epstein, it's going to be you're a perv. That seems to be what his friends feel. That's how his friends feel. His best friends in the world. Yes. For those who haven't seen the actual drawing, you've just heard about it. We've got it here. You can just pull it up, Lockie. This is the one that the Wall Street Journal couldn't wait to get this on their front page because Trump was suing him for $10 billion because he said the book didn't even exist. Yes, this is exactly as the Wall Street Journal described. To remind you of the text, voiceover, there must be more to life than having everything. Donald, yes there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes we do. Come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. So that is extremely creepy. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean, like I was saying before, it doesn't necessarily mean pedo, but it definitely is very insinuative of sexual weirdness, I would say. It's also just weird in general. Is this how very rich people talk to each other? I mean, I wouldn't know. But it's a really odd birthday card. That's all I'm saying.
Well, this is the thing. This is the line they're running. They're saying Donald Trump doesn't speak like that. I don't know if you saw Daily Wire. Some of the defenses are hilarious, by the way. They'll just take a step back and then I'll get to the Daily Wire.
I mean, I'm assuming he didn't personally write that. I'm assuming he had someone write something for him, but he still signed it.
Yeah. This is where I'm going. There are people who are trying to make it a thing that he clearly didn't write it. And you go, well, I don't understand why Trump didn't just say, yeah, one of my underlings wrote it and I just signed it. I don't even remember it. It's nothing. It's such an obvious thing to say. I mean, we know he was friends with Epstein in 2003. We know. There's no new information here. So why it'd be strange if he wasn't in the book. This book has hundreds of pages. Is he not in the top few hundred friends of Epstein? Of course he is. Of course he's in the book. And there's no skin off Trump's nose to say, yeah, they asked me to supply something. I got a secretary to fill it out. It's very strange. He ran with the line, the book doesn't exist, because the book was obviously going to get produced.
Well, I suppose they didn't think it was obvious. If it hadn't been published in the first instance when the story came out, they may be hoping it doesn't come out. Because I do think, if you say, oh, my secretary wrote it, that just prompts further questioning. People are going to be like, well, who wrote it? Let's speak to them. We want to ask them more questions. Like, it doesn't make it go away. Yeah. And also, that's just an embarrassing thing to admit to.
Yeah. I mean, look, you don't have to be specific with the secretary. You can just say, I don't remember it all. It's a birthday card. Do you remember all the birthday cards you signed 20 years ago? Like, it's just like maybe a staffer wrote it. Maybe I got no idea. I remember.
I've never signed my name as pubic hair, so I wouldn't say it's just a run of the mill birthday card. But I certainly think he's gotten some staffer or someone to write something for him.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like Trump at any point in time. I think we can agree on that. I did find that the massive reaction strange to when it came out. Like I thought we all were when the story first broke, it took 1 second for one of Epstein's ex-lawyers to say, yeah, this state has it. They're very open about it. And so why everyone's going, oh, they've got the book. And you just go, yeah, it doesn't really prove anything, and I don't really understand why this is such a big deal. But since Trump picked such a terrible defense, that then I guess made it a thing. Is he going to keep on denying its existence? And he labelled the story false, malicious, and defamatory, which suggests if it's true, it's really negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Which also I don't know why you concede that. It's just saying I don't know. I'm finding this whole chapter quite confusing.
I think it does speak to his mindset on the whole files, which is that no one has. Lots of people have accused him of various forms of sexual misconduct, but not in regards to Epstein. And I don't get the impression that there is something there in terms of him being involved in Epstein's crimes at all. No. We've certainly not seen anything to suggest that, and it kind of feels like something that we probably would have heard of by now. I think for the most part, the reason, why is he being so cagey? Why is he want to not release these files? It's because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to him and his friends. This weird birthday card is embarrassing. Signing his name as pubic hair is embarrassing. Being associated for a long time with a notorious child molester is very embarrassing. It's a bad look.
Yeah, except for, I keep on saying, his name in the actual DO. The reason we saw that signature is because that came from the Epstein estate. If the Department of Justice had that, where that signature would be a big black bar. Donald Trump's name is redacted on every single one of the Epstein files. So I don't know what the problem is. Anyway, I was talking about the excuses. The excuses are hilarious to try and somehow stay on the right side of Trump when he's taking such a ridiculous position. Karen Levitt, she said, the latest piece published by the Wall Street Journal proves this entire birthday card story is false. As I said all along, it's very clear President Trump did not draw his picture and he did not sign it. And White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications Taylor Butterwich said, time for News Corp to open that checkbook. It's not his signature. Defamation! And he showed the signatures of Trump today next to the signature from the book, showing it's different. It's a different signature. So therefore, it can't be him. Unfortunately, though, the signature was identical to a signature in a book that Trump signed for Epstein in 1997, which you can see there. And there are heaps of other examples. That was his old personal signature style, apparently. So it's his signature. The Daily Wire, as I was telling you about this, they ran the birthday card past 3 AI engines to ask the AI engines whether the writing matches Trump's style. And you'll be surprised to hear it didn't. Who would have thought? One of the engines wrote, the stylistic gulf between the note and Trump's known communication patterns is not merely a matter of slight variation. It represents a fundamental and pervasive mismatch across nearly every linguistic metric. The other two didn't think that the weird poem was much like the way Trump talks either. That's an incredibly surprising discovery. But Carolyn Levitt was very convinced by this, so much so that she took to the podium to tout this new discovery.
And in fact, I have already seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out. I believe it was the Daily Signal that published a piece with 3 separate signature analysts who said that this absolutely was not the president's authentic signature. And we have maintained that position all along.
The Daily Signal, I think, was an ABC podcast for a while there. Maybe she is a pepper. Okay, so it's Daily Wire, not the Daily Signal. They were AI engines, not signature experts. It was writing style, not signatures. They were much less definitive than what she just said. But otherwise, she is spot on in describing that evidence. Well done, Carolyn. My favourite excuse, though, was from Tim Burchett. Have you seen Tim Burchett's excuse? This is gold. Go for it, Tim.
I mean, anybody can do a signature. We've seen the auto pen's been used quite a bit with the Biden administration. So I've never known Trump to be much of an artist either. So I kind of draw that into question.
There's a history of him drawing
the
stuff.
thing is, it's been there for 4 years, and now it's just come out. I just don't buy it.
So you think really someone might have just forged this somehow and sent this to the app?
Somehow. It's so easy to do. I just don't buy any of it right now because we have a prior administration that's had a history of dishonesty, and they bring something like this out now. Why wouldn't they bring it out during the campaign?
Why wouldn't they bring this out during the campaign? If this was real, they would have brought it out during the campaign.
Is he suggesting that Biden brought this out now?
I don't know. All I know is if they did bring it out during the campaign, they'd be saying, oh, this is obviously a stitch-up. They brought it out during the campaign. Whereas now they brought it out in the middle of nothing time. Oh, why didn't they bring it out when it could have been politically advantageous to them? It must be a setup and fake. Huh? And also, never mind where they got their hands on an auto pen in 2003, but if it was a fake signature, it came out of a book from 2003, which means someone forged Trump's signature in 2003 when he wasn't a politician and was in fact a Democrat. Because they thought they'd get him in 20 years' time. This was 6 years before Jeffrey Epstein was even publicly suspected of anything. So they forged a signature on just a random businessman perv's birthday card of Trump, just in case Jeffrey Epstein himself one day would be on the nose and Trump would be president and would switch parties, and this would be politically advantageous.
Yeah, but not during the campaign where it might have affected the outcome of the election.
The perfect crime. Anyway, this is becoming quite funny. Look, I don't want to go into the contents of the birthday book because they're very depressing, but I think you summarised them quite well. Perv. Do you have anything else to say about this topic?
No.
No? Okay, all right. Do you have much to say about the Venezuela boat? I hope you do.
A little bit. Yeah.
Good, because I really want to talk about that because it's really legal. I just feel there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say. I've just said a bit, but there's more to say. So good. So we can talk about this. It's good. Okay. All right. Okay. So we've learned a few things in the last week about this Venezuela boat. Dave and I talked a bit about it before, and we've learned a lot more since then. When the news first broke of the attack, amateur lawyers like myself were diving into my book of justifications for hostilities and trying to see if any of them fit. None of them seemed to fit. Then we learned a bit more about the justification from the White House. Anna Kelly, White House spokesperson, made this statement. The strike was taken in defence of vital US national interests and in the collective self-defence of other nations. Do you have any thoughts about the self-defence?
Well, I don't want to step on where you're going, but
no, you can step.
It's been recently reported that the boat was turning around.
Well, that is correct. I'm definitely heading in that direction. Rubio has specifically stated the opposite. He said the boat could have been interdicted, but it was destroyed instead by choice.
The United States has long, for many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. So they were designated as what they are narco-terrorist organizations. So the same information and the same intelligence mechanisms with maybe a higher focus was used to determine that a drug boat was headed towards eventually the United States. And instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, he blew it up. And it'll happen again. Maybe it's happening right now. I don't know. But the point is, the president of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations.
And about the same time Rubio was saying that, Trump was saying they were sending a message, which is also not self-defense. Self-defense is when you need to do something because you have no other options but to defend yourself. Self-defense is not sending a message, making a choice, saying, oh, this will be more effective. None of that is self-defense. So they were all denying their own self-defense claims with their own statements. But as an aside, why would Rubio think the drug bosses don't care if you arrest their people and confiscate their things, but they do care if you blow up their speedboat? Why would drug bosses care about that? Are you suggesting that drug bosses are really concerned about their drug couriers? Maybe they're model bosses. I don't know, but I don't think so. I reckon they wouldn't give a stuff about any of these things. That's my take. Then Trump sent a War Powers Act notification to Congress, explicitly explaining his justification, which was this. He refers to extraordinary violent drug trafficking cartels, and then he says, in the face of the inability or unwillingness of some states in the region to address the continuing threat to United States persons and interests emanating from their territories, we have now reached this critical point where we must meet this threat to our citizens and our most vital national interests with the United States military force in self-defense. So he's mentioned self-defense there. Accordingly, at my direction, on September 2nd, 2025, United States forces struck a vessel at a location beyond the territorial seas of any nation that was assessed to be affiliated with a designated terrorist organization. We'll come back to that. And to be engaged in illicit drug trafficking activities. It's not possible this time to know the full scope and duration of military operations that will be necessary. United States forces remain postured to carry out further military operations. I'm providing this report as part of my efforts to keep the Congress fully informed. Consistent with the War Powers Resolution, I direct these actions consistent with my responsibility to protect Americans and United States interests abroad and in furtherance of United States national security and foreign policy interests pursuant to my constitutional authority as Commander-in-Chief and Chief Executive to conduct United States foreign relations. He should have said, thank you for attention to this matter. But he didn't. So he says it's self-defense from illicit drug trafficking activities from a terrorist group. That's what he's saying. Now note, there are a bunch of things he didn't say there. He didn't say the boat was Trenderagua. He didn't say how it was affiliated with any designated terrorist organization, just that it was. He didn't say what illicit drug trafficking activities it was engaged in. He didn't say it even had drugs on it, the boat. He didn't say they were heading to America. There's a lot of things he didn't say that had been leaked to the press, but when he's giving a formal statement, he does not say. So either much of what we heard last week was bullshit, or Trump didn't want to confirm it for some reason. But the justification, once again, self-defense from a drug trafficking designated terrorist organization. Okay, we've learned a lot more about the boat. We've learned where it was going. There was a whole lot of confusion early on about whether the boat was going to America or not. Last Tuesday, when the news first broke, Rubio said the boat was probably heading to Trinidad or someplace like that.
These particular drugs were probably headed to Trinidad or some other country in the Caribbean, at which point they just contribute to the instability these countries are facing.
Then the president asserted it was actually heading to America, and Rubio fell in line the day after.
Period. If you're on a boat full of cocaine or fentanyl or whatever headed to the United States, you're an immediate threat to the United States. And the president, under his authority as commander-in-chief, has a right under exigent circumstances to eliminate imminent threats to the United States. And that's what he did yesterday in international waters.
And interestingly, looking at the video of the boat that Trump tweeted out, that kind of boat is called a panga. They don't carry enough fuel to get to America. That is why all those things put together, they highlighted in the official statement, Trump never said it was going to America. We've also learnt more about what this boat was doing, which is where we get to the bit you were talking about. If they are in Trinidad, according to Insight Crime, Trinidad has no large-scale involvement in smuggling cocaine across international borders. Co-founder of Insight Crime says, we've found no direct participation of TDA in the transnational drug trade, although there are cases of them acting as subcontractors for other drug trafficking organisations. Maybe. But then also, it was interesting, the former senior federal law enforcement official told the New York Times it was strange to have 11 people manning a vessel that could easily be crewed by 2 or 3. That is, unless they're trying to break the Guinness World Record for cramming drug smugglers into a speedboat, especially since traffickers try to maximise the drugs they're carrying because they're drug traffickers, not people traffickers. That's why in the former official's opinion, it was more likely the vessel was carrying migrants on a human smuggling run, perhaps. The New York Times also said the boat had altered its course, which is what you mentioned before. It appeared to have turned around before the attack started. They said the boat might have observed the military aircraft in the area. Either way, hard to justify that self-defense claim, as you say, correctly. If the boat is retreating, that's not an imminent threat, is it? Also interesting, people on board the boat supposedly survived the initial strike. According to 2 American officials familiar with the matter, they were killed in a follow-up attack. What's the justification for that, I wonder? The imminent threat is over. The boat is blown up. They are dog paddling in an ocean at that point in time, and you come back to kill them. Doesn't sound like self-defense to me. It sounds like murder. So that justification is looking pretty wobbly at this point in time. Before I talk about how it's morphed, would you like to jump in with any other thoughts so far?
Yeah, I just find it ironic that Trump is trying to justify these actions by declaring drug cartels terrorists, because I feel like the logic underpinning the action is actually the same logic of terrorism, which is that, to be clear, Trump isn't, to the best of my knowledge, despite what you've just said, deliberately targeting civilians, which is what we think of as the hallmark of terror. So I'm not saying that Trump is Al-Qaeda or anything like that. I'm just saying the logic of terrorists is that even though they can't take out a whole army, they can be effective for their cause by making examples of a relatively small number of people.
Yep.
So you strike fear into the hearts of the broader population who would consider being on the side.
And I'm not looking at anything. I'm just thinking. You're
Just
right.
thinking about something.
No, I'm thinking about your point. I'll look at you.
Okay. You strike fear into the hearts of a broader population so that people are scared from participating in whatever the cause is that you're trying to get people against.
You send a message.
Exactly. So Trump,
Yes.
and they've explicitly said this,
Yes.
is wagering that by arbitrarily killing a few people here and there, cartels will stop trafficking drugs. It's rather than trying to stop all drugs coming across the border, because that's too big of a thing to realistically do, let's just make everyone too scared to be drug smugglers. If we just unilaterally kill a handful of people, it will scare everyone away. It is the same underpinning logic, I think, which, again, not saying he's a terrorist, but just find that a little bit ironic.
That's a good point.
But also, I think it's not going to work because, as you've kind of already spoken to a bit, he's taking out low-level people, assuming this is even a drug operation, which is not. We have not seen the evidence to prove that. We're taking them at their word, which we shouldn't. But even say that they are, you're talking about taking out a handful of low-level people, not the kingpins of these operations. There's always going to be someone poor and desperate enough to risk their lives if the price is right to carry drugs across a border, across the seas. So if it has any impact at all, if they do this more and it scares some number of people off becoming drug smugglers into America, if it has any impact at all, maybe illegal drugs get a little bit more expensive, which is more inflation for American people, but is not going to stop the drug trade.
You're right. And by the way, if you want to catch the kingpins, you need to know where they're from. You need to know where they're based. And a great way to potentially find out is through the use of forensic evidence. in order to get that forensic evidence, you need to not blow it up in the water. So when you blow up the entire boat and all the drugs, assuming there were drugs, then you give up any chance of finding anyone else associated with the scheme. Whereas if you get the evidence, capture the evidence, you might be able to keep on pulling threads, yeah?
I heard a remarkable stat the other day that the estimate of the market for illegal drugs in America is 0.8% of GDP.
Yeah.
So you're not going to shut that down.
No,
I mean,
you're
Dave's made
not.
this point that, that there's Americans' appetite for illegal drugs is a piece of this puzzle as well.
Yes.
And you're not going to shut that down just by blowing up a handful of poor Venezuelans.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Venezuela is not a source of fentanyl anyway, but which is the one they're supposedly worried about. But let's forget Venezuela for a second. If they crack down on Mexico and China and all the rest of it, and they blew up ships all over
Canada,
the place.
joking.
Especially Canada. Blow up Montreal. They just blow up ships everywhere. And mooses. So, you can make fentanyl in America, It's a synthetic compound. Like, they just don't because it's expensive. But once the price goes up, as you said, then it just incentivizes making it in America. You're right. When the demand's there, the product will be there.
At least he'll be onshoring manufacturing.
Yeah, that's true. It'll help the black market deficit. Let's keep on going on the terrorist thing. I'll tell you who's fond of the terrorist talking point. That's J.D. Vance. He loves it.
What legal authority were you guys working under, and will there be an after report on the strike?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be an after report. I mean, the legal authority, and I want to talk about these kids, is that there are people who are bringing literal terrorists who are bringing deadly drugs into our country, and the President of the United States ran on a promise of stopping this poison from coming into our country.
It's true, Trendaragua was one of 8 gangs designated as terrorists, but I don't think that makes them terrorists. Like you say, terrorism has a definition. It's political. Like the definition in the US statutes of terrorism is premeditated, politically motivated violence perpetrated against non-combatant targets.
Yeah, selling drugs is not a political crime.
Right. It's just
a crime.
It's just a crime. Yeah, it's just a crime. But let's say they are terrorists. Let's say Trump can designate terrorists and just pretend all of a sudden they're terrorists. Okay. That designation came with no authority for the use of force. Like, the statute it's based on bars Americans from providing material supportive resources, bars members of the group from entry into the United States. It requires financial institutions to block transactions involving the terrorist property and their assets. It doesn't mention force. The relevance of the executive order designating terrorists to blowing things up is zero. It doesn't mention force at all. There are all kinds of right-wingers going, what about Obama? He blew up all those terrorists with drones. Yeah, they were covered by the 2001 authorization for the use of military force after 9/11. Like, as a war on terror thing. Like, the reason Obama could blow them up is not because they were terrorists or he called them terrorists. It's because they were covered by the AUMF. That was the key. There is no anything here. It's just someone calling another person a terrorist. That's not an authority under the law.
And imagine if it was, if Trump could just unilaterally declare anyone a terrorist and then kill them.
Well, then watch out the people who've been scratching Teslas with keys because he called them terrorists. So that's a real slippery slope. Okay, so that's terrorism. Then there's the drug dealer thing, right? This is the one, hexathlite.
Mr. Secretary, what legal authority did the Pentagon invoke to strike that boat full of drug smugglers?
We have the absolute and complete authority to conduct that. First of all, just the defense of the American people alone. 100,000 Americans were killed each year under the previous administration because of an open border and open drug traffic flow.
Was there
that is an assault on the American people. I said we smoked a drug boat, and there's 11 narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean. And when other people try to do that, they're going to meet the same fate.
Wow. Have you ever seen a leader who reeks more of insecurity about his manhood than Pete Hegseth? Extraordinary. Buy that man a red sports car now. Please. I've never seen someone who needs it more. Incredible. Another quote from Hegseth. Every boatload of any form of drug that poisons the American people is an imminent threat. And at the DoD, our job is to defeat imminent threats. A foreign terrorist organisation poisoning your people with drugs coming from a drug cartel is no different than Al-Qaeda, and they will be treated as such as they were in international waters. Would you say drug dealers are the same as Al-Qaeda, Melina?
No, again, I think there is, like, not to, like, shame people who are drug addicts because, obviously, like, it's not, it is an illness, but, like, the idea that people, like, selling drugs to people who are buying them, even if, it's not willing in the traditional sense when people are addicted, is not the same as blowing up people in a house of worship or a market or a school.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
quite different.
Like the drug buyer plays a role in the transaction.
Yes.
Whereas the person sitting in an office building when a plane drives through plays no role in that process at all.
Also, a huge part of the opioid epidemic in the States was driven by legitimate so-called pharma companies. Yeah. And it's not like going around blowing up the Sackler family. Yeah, it's just... it's ridiculous to say they're the same.
Not to mention, drug dealers off the coast of Trinidad are not an imminent threat as well. We should also... He's talking imminent threats there. You can stop them without blowing them up. So that, by definition, not an imminent threat. Blowing them up, it's a choice. Another example of this mindset came from old buddy J.D. Vance, who tweeted out... Killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. Brian Krasenstein replied, killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. And J.D. Vance replied, I don't give a shit what you call it. Mr. Vice President, another tough guy like Pete Hegseth. Those two should go out, hit the town together, I reckon. They can both have rolled up sleeves and like aviator sunglasses, and they can chew gum while they slap girls on the ass or whatever they do while they're walking around in nightclubs. This is the image I have of these middle-aged losers. I hope you like it. Anyway, I say as a really cool middle-aged person. Anyway. Rand Paul's response to this is, JD, I don't give a shit Vance, says killing people he accuses of a crime is the highest and best use of the military. Did he ever read To Kill a Mockingbird? Did he ever wonder what might happen if the accused were immediately executed without trial or representation? What a despicable and thoughtless sentiment it is to glorify killing someone without trial. Interesting. This is how the Trump War Room responded. Well, for those who are listening rather than watching, it's a SpongeBob meme where you have a fish that's labelled Rand Paul and it's holding a dead SpongeBob, which says dead drug dealers, and Rand Paul is crying over the dead drug dealers, suggesting that Rand Paul is bemoaning the death of drug dealers. That meme would have been a massive win in the fourth grade. If only they had worked in cooties into it somehow, it would have really gone off.
Also ignoring his whole... It's annoying to even have to explain it, but his whole point is that we don't know that they're drug dealers.
Yes.
He's not saying don't kill drug dealers, although also probably don't. But, we don't know they were drug dealers.
Yeah.
Where's the evidence? They just told us that. That's all we know.
That's correct. Although, look, I don't want to suggest that that's the least mature response, because then there's also Seb Gorka. Can we play Seb Gorka, Lucky?
We will find you and we will kill you. If you're a jihadi with American blood on your hands, if you're a cartel member bringing powdered death into America, you have declared war on us, and we will turn you into red mist.
I love the approving nod from the Newsmax host there. But you might have seen he was holding up a little band at the beginning. They were the initials, WW, we will find you and we will kill you. He puts it on his wrist. I included all those responses because I wanted to make clear how widespread across the administration this attitude is. There are some serious double standards here. Trump pardoned Ross Ulbricht, who's possibly the most effective drug trafficker of all time. Number one. Number two, he appointed an ex-heroin dealer as his health secretary, RFK Jr. Number three, literally this week, he gave Dr. Ronnie Jackson his military rank back after he'd been busted down for handing out controlled substances like candy when he was Trump's doctor. But it goes further because, of course, there is nothing in these justifications, as you said, that says you can only kill terrorists and drug dealers in international waters. Why not do it in America? Like, can you attack a drug warehouse in Baltimore with an army drone? Why not? There's nowhere in any of their assertions that says it has to be outside America. I mean, they're not going by the law here, so they could make up anything they want. There is one person, by the way, who quite famously decided he could go around killing suspected drug dealers without even knowing if they were drug dealers. That person was Trump's buddy, Roberto Duterte, the ex-president of the Philippines. You might not have heard from him for a while. He was president about 10 years ago. Do you remember Duterte?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he killed a lot of people.
I did a whole mono on him for the Weekly about 10 years ago.
Do you know what he's up to now? Do you know?
Oh, he's been charged internationally.
Yes, he's been charged with war crimes. Crimes against humanity, Crimes against humanity. That's what, you know what his crimes against humanity were?
Like extrajudicial killings of suspected drug dealers.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly what they just did. That is what he is in The Hague for right now. What Trump just did. By the way, they still have drugs in the Philippines anyway.
Yeah, I bet.
Spoiler. Okay, so what is going on here? Before I go on, do you want to add anything?
Oh, just because you mentioned Duterte,
Sure.
Side note on Venezuela.
Yes, please.
I find it really curious that Venezuela is the one authoritarian nation that Trump seems to have no interest in dealing with.
Yeah.
Like, he doubled the bounty on Maduro's head to $50 million for his arrest. Like, he's consistently anti-Venezuela when it's like he's open to working with Iran, North Korea. It's not even just like, he likes certain authoritarians that are in some, like Putin and Duterte. Like, he likes even the ones that are kind of in countries that America is typically at odds with. But Venezuela, very consistently the bad, evil people. I just find it odd. And just a fun side note on Maduro, because I was reading about Venezuela in this context. A little bit of a dog leg. Tangent treehouse, if you will.
I will.
Last year, Maduro brought Christmas forward to distract from accusations that he stole the election, which feels really up Trump's alley as a style. And he's just announced that he's bringing Christmas even earlier this year to October 1, allegedly to bring joy to the Venezuelan people.
So, what happens after October 1? No more joy.
I don't know.
He should have several Christmases.
I got out of the rabbit hole after that.
That's really good.
Really enjoyed that fact.
That is a great fact. I love that. That is the best Tangent Treehouse ever. October 1. I wish Dave was here for that trivia. That's fantastic. I tell you what I reckon is going on here, because you've asked the question about the Venezuela thing. There's a bit of foreign policy battle going on. You've made it about Trump. I'm not sure it's about Trump. I think there's a foreign policy battle going on between Rubio and Richard Grenell. Grenell is kind of like the Yan to Witkoff's Yin. Like he's kind of like the dark side of Witkoff. Like Witkoff is like the little white fairy, and Grenell is the black fairy. And Grenell, he's also a bit more competent than Witkoff, and he's been trying to establish relations with Venezuela. He wants to reach out to them. He wants to exploit them, basically. And he has no compunction at all at dealing with a dictator if he can make money. And that's what he wants to do. And he's trying to. Rubio, he grew up in Florida, Cuban relatives, like Cuban family. He's got ideological issues with a dictator in Venezuela. And he wants to kill Maduro. And he wants to overthrow the government. And he wants democracy, real democracy, to come back into Venezuela. And so I think what's going on here is that I think Grenell is trying to establish his relationship with Maduro, and Rubio's trying to thwart him. And he's trying to escalate as much as he possibly. I think Rubio's whispering in Trump's ear about this. That's what I think is going on. It's interesting that Maduro's main response after the ship was blown up was, Mr. President Donald Trump, you have to be careful because Marco Rubio wants your hands stained with blood, with South American blood, Caribbean blood, Venezuelan blood. It's an interesting response, isn't it? So I think that, I'm not an expert at this kind of stuff, so we'll see how this develops, but I mean, that's the vibe I'm getting. The other thing is, I mean, there's obviously branding going on here as well. I mean, this is the same week that they renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. Sorry, nicknamed it. Like a lot of tough talk that week as well. A lot of warfighters talk from Hegseth. He loves our warfighters and lethality. I mean, maybe it's because right now they don't seem very tough at all because Russia is just making a fool of Trump in Ukraine, and China is just making Trump his bitch over and over and over again. So I don't know, but I feel like there's another branding. There's a second boat. There was a second boat they blew up, but this time, after this first controversy, they seized the drugs, arrested the people, took them off the boat, and then blew up the boat for the internet. Then they released that to show how tough they were. So, I mean, it just seems to me like they're trying to be tough guys.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to finish off here on this section with 2 questions. What's the story of the legal advice? I've just explained in 10 different ways that no competent lawyer could possibly think this was legal. And I've missed out a lot. Like, I gave you a super summary, believe it or not. Active duty judge advocates have been speaking in the New York Times saying, quote, under international law, there is no way this even gets close to being a legitimate use of force. Okay. So how's this get signed off on by a JAG? I'll tell you how. Hegseth sacked a bunch of JAGs when he took over at Department of Defense at the beginning of the year. Why did he replace them? This is his quote. He wanted to avoid roadblocks to orders that are given by a commander-in-chief. That's his quote. We don't want legal roadblocks. Who he replaced them with, I'm not sure. But I do know this. He empowered his personal lawyer, Timothy Parlatore, to help overhaul the JAG Corps to make the US military less restricted by the laws of armed conflict, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Parlatore, if that's a name you don't know, also represented Eddie Gallagher, who I think Melina knows, is a Navy SEAL accused of first-degree murder a couple of years back. He murdered a captured ISIS fighter, and he had tried to murder some civilians as well in Iraq. He was getting court-martialed and drummed out of the army, and then Pete Hegseth intervened on Fox News. Very passionate about getting war criminals off is Pete Hegseth. And that's what you get when you make a man of that caliber defense secretary. You get him trying to work against these things as defense secretary. Then Trump wrote an executive order, 14215, ensuring accountability for all agencies. It said, the President and the Attorney General's opinions on questions of law are controlling on all employees in the conduct of their official duties. No employee of the executive branch acting in their official capacity may advance an interpretation of the law as the position of the United States that contravenes the President or the Attorney General's opinion on a matter of law. Now you might go, well, that obviously doesn't apply to JAGs. That would be a completely illegal executive order. Like, JAG's job is to give independent legal advice on interference. What do you reckon? The New York Times was reporting 2 days after the story broke, the boat story broke, that the administration hadn't yet made up their mind what their legal justification was going to be. What kind of lawyer signs off on that kind of operation? So that's my first question. I have no answer, but whatever the answer is, it's a bad answer. Do you have anything to add before I say the second question?
Well, I just wouldn't even assume a lawyer did sign off, because if there's no justification, then there's no reasoning to sign off. It's possible.
It's possible. My second question, what kind of soldier would carry out this order? Because unless you just got parachuted out of the stratosphere and haven't been anywhere for the last few years, you have heard endlessly us hearing about how soldiers don't follow illegal orders. Don't worry whether Trump's immune or not when he gives an illegal order, because the soldiers won't comply. They're not immune, and they are trained to not follow illegal orders. They didn't even have a legal justification for this order. It didn't even have a justification when it was handed out, and yet they carried it out. It's a long-standing rule in the military that they don't use lethal force against civilians, even if they're criminals. Why would the soldier accept this order? Are they hacks? Are they bloodthirsty? Are they idiots? Are they scared? Are they overly trusting? I don't know. I got no idea. All I know is that we now have confirmed for us, yet again, this is not the first time, there are no guardrails anymore.
Yes.
If Trump orders soldiers to take over a voting booth, they will take over a voting booth. If Trump orders soldiers to shoot protesters in the knees, they will shoot protesters in the knees. I don't want to be alarmist, but it's clearly, like, you can't get clearer against the law than the military shooting civilians or blowing them up. And that's what they did. We just need to be aware where we're at. That's where we're at.
I would just say, like, why would you expect, like, not you, the general expect just, everyday rank and file soldiers to be the ones to stand up to the president when all of these well-paid, very comfortably off people in jobs in the administration have no backbone.
All these Supreme Court Chief Justices have no backbone.
And Congress.
Yes.
And, like, all of these people who have lots of other options in their life, who are just bending over to accommodate anything Trump asks for. Like, why would you expect a random soldier on a boat in international waters to be like, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah.
Like, they're not lawyers. They're trained to follow the law. They're also trained to do what they're told.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Which is why last year's, as I was just referring to, last year's immunity ruling, it was just such a farce. I remember the hypotheticals they were saying. What happens if Trump orders SEAL Team 6 to kill his opponents? That was the classic hypothetical. Oh, silly hypothetical. Whatever. Okay. The soldiers who blew up that boat with the people in it, if they get charged by the next administration, they're going to jail for murder. That's just clear. But Trump, the person who told them to do it, is immune.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chief Justice Roberts. Only a couple of minutes left, Melina. Let's do this.
All right. The US has 4% of the world's population.
Yeah.
What percentage of the world's opioid medication and ADHD meds do you think they take? They're two separate stats, but they're quite similar to each other, so you can guess either or both at once.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's interesting, actually, because I would have guessed a higher percentage of the opioids because not every country does opioids. But if they're similar, then the number I'm going to pick is 70%.
80% of the world's opioid medication and 83% of the world's ADHD meds.
So it's more of ADHD meds. I'm really shocked by that. I thought
it was even higher, and it's come down.
Yeah, I would have thought Europe would have had a bit of a slice of the ADHD meds. How about that?
I don't really have anything more to say on it. I just heard that on a podcast and found it interesting.
It's a great stat. Thank you very much. Okay, let's just do a little bit of immigration. I always leave immigration till last, and so it just gets more and more out of date. All right, let's try and sneak in a couple of these immigrations. Alligator Alcatraz. Federal Judge Kathleen Williams entered the preliminary injunction a way back to prevent the installation of any additional industrial-style lighting and any site expansion at Alligator Alcatraz. And no additional people who were not already being detained at the site at the time of the order. And she also ordered within 60 days that once population attrition allows a safe implementation of the order, they must remove all generators, gas, sewage, and other waste receptacles. In other words, they were shutting down Alligator Alcatraz. Why? Because they violated environmental standards in the swamp, the pristine swamp. There's a process you got to go through to build something in Everglades, and DeSantis ignored it. Now, he claimed Alligator Alcatraz is run by the state of Florida, not ICE, making it not subject to federal environmental requirements. We have talked about this legal grey zone before, which is the thing I'm nervous about with these state prisons. The judge wasn't buying it, so their legal fiction didn't hold up. The same day that ruling got handed down, an email was leaked out of one of the workers there saying they'll be down to 0 individuals within a few days. They actually had 1,000 people at one point there, and they're almost down to 0. But then the appeals court intervened. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals blocked the order 2-1. That's 2 Trump judges to 1 Obama judge, for those who are cynical. Why? They bought the legal loophole. They said Alcatraz had been entirely funded and operated by Florida. It shouldn't be applicable to federal environmental law, so you can just do what you like. The National Environmental Policy Act would not apply. So if that ends up being the dominant interpretation, then that means the courts will have created the exact legal grey zone, which I feared, which they're clearly trying to do, the DHS. This is like their version of Nauru. And ICE can just pay the states to run their gulags for them in any way they want, as long as it's not a direct payment. Pay them indirectly. So easy. The majority said, given that the federal government has an undisputed and wide-reaching interest in combating illegal immigration, and that illegal immigration is a matter of national security and public safety, we think the injunction issued below goes against the public interest. So there are now 125 prisons at Alcatraz. It might go up to 1,000 again. But meanwhile, while that was happening, there are about another 10 of these prisons popping up all over the place like little zits. We've got in Nebraska. Do you know what it's called?
The Cornhusker Clink.
That's the one. How about in Indiana? Do you know what that one's called?
Yes, the Speedway Slammer. This is literally my Planet America piece for Monday.
Is it? Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
And Florida has 2 more.
Yeah, there's the Deportation Depot. What's the other one?
The Panhandle Pokey.
The Panhandle Pokey. And there's also the Louisiana Lockup. That's another one. Let's not forget that one. Apparently there's some cosmic rule that if you want to operate a hideous gulag, you need to give it a chintzy alliterative name. That's the rule. Yeah, the Louisiana Lockup is the latest of them. It's a disused prison in Angola, Louisiana. It used to hold 400 detainees. It's a bit Alcatraz, actually. It's on a bend on the Mississippi River. It was once known as the Dungeon. And if people escape, you're going to be confronted by swamps filled with alligators and forests filled with bears. I feel like Australia is missing a trick. I feel like we've got the wildlife for one hell of a US prison. I reckon we could make a mozza. We just need to learn how to do alliteration. That's all we need. But anyway, the Dungeon in the 1960s and 70s earned a reputation for stabbings, riots, and squalor, which is why I think Kirsty Noam is so enchanted by it. This is the thing about these things, these prisons. ICE detention, it's not meant to be punishment. It's not a prison. It's just meant to be a place you wait for your court case. Like 70% of these people don't have criminal records. They're just people petitioning for asylum. And Christy Noam's like, oh yeah, the worst of the worst. You better watch out. You end up there.
But that's the thing. The terrible conditions in a lot of these places is the point. It's similar to blowing up alleged drug dealers. The idea is to make it seem so unappealing that you would just not bother, that people self-deport. That's literally what they're saying. Yeah. Like, that's not me speculating. They've said that part out loud.
And by the way, one of these days someone's going to challenge these people in court as a violation of the 8th Amendment for cruel and unusual punishment. Like unconstitutional punitive conditions of confinement. That's pretty unconstitutional. I mean, what's going to happen then is they'll lose the case and they'll spend millions of dollars going to the Supreme Court to lose it. But, you know, for a while there, it's going to make a great PEP. I'm so ready for that. But anyway, the legal loophole's back and it's now multiplied. So that's Alligator Alcatraz for you. Anything else to say about Alligator Alcatraz or any kind of alliteration of any kind whatsoever?
No, I won't step on my planet piece.
Okay. All right. That's
Watch it
all
on
right.
Monday.
That's okay. All right.
Planet piece.
That's what she said.
That's alliteration.
Oh, you're right. It's alliteration, PP. He's so sharp, Lockie, I'm telling you. Okay, all right.
You could name a prison.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 quick ones. Sorry, Supervisor, and then we're done. These are real quick.
So, 20 minutes.
Immigration judges. The Trump administration is going to be granting itself new permission to hire, I heard you, to hire any attorney to serve as an immigration judge on a temporary basis. They used to need to be former immigration judges or administrative law judges from other agencies or justice attorneys with at least 10 years of experience to be a temporary immigration judge. Experience in immigration law, that is. But the administration called those parameters overly restrictive, noting it's hired fewer than a dozen temporary judges in the last 11 years. So that's fair enough. They probably have a point, except they're completely undermining the whole point of immigration judges because they've purged or bought out like 100 immigration judges out of the 700 they had. And they never explained why those judges were fired. But they then have replaced them with the rubber stampiest judges you could have, which is they have enacted a memo parachuting in 600 DOJ attorneys as temporary judges. These are people who are subject to being fired or disciplined for making decisions the executive doesn't like. So they wouldn't exactly call them neutral referees, satisfying the due process the Constitution demands from judges. And they're going to do it in 4 batches of 150. First batch starts this week. Appointments no longer than 179 days. They expire in February, but then they can be renewed. So I'm not sure immigrants applying for asylum are going to get much of a shake from those guys. The idea was actually Ron DeSantis's. He comes up with all the best ideas. Alligator Alcatraz and this one. Anyway, it's in place. And so basically Trump has just hollowed out the whole immigration judge system. So they're all getting deported. Spoiler. And then the last thing, I think that's quick. Do you have anything to say about that? No. Last thing. This is something you haven't heard much of. It's going to be quick. And it's something you can thank Biden for. Back in 2024, the DHS entered into a contract with Paragon Software to develop spyware that can be used to hack into any mobile phone in the world, including encrypted apps. What it does is, this software, is it creates cyber attacks that look like spam texts. But even if you ignore the spam text, it still hacks your phone. You don't need to touch it. So that's an interesting technology. They deployed the spyware first in Italy, where it created a huge scandal because 90 journalists and refugee rights activists had their phones hacked by the government. They were targeted by this new tech, and it gave total access to their messages. Paragon cancelled the contract with the Italian government almost immediately after the story broke. And the Biden administration, well, they also put the contract on hold just to make sure it went through a compliance review. I can save you that compliance review. No, it doesn't comply with anything that it's meant to comply with. But now, in America, that hold, it's been lifted. And guess who's getting their hands on that software?
Goody.
ICE! If you can't trust ICE, who can you trust? I'm sure ICE would never misuse this super powerful surveillance tool. And if they did, the important thing is we wouldn't know who did misuse it because they'd be wearing a mask at the time. I totally predict there'll be at least one massive scandal because of this tool within the next 3 years before this administration is done. You heard it here first. That didn't get in the news much, did it? But, I'll remind you of it when it does get in the news. Don't worry. You got anything else you want to add, Melina, about anything at all that we've talked about?
No.
I'm only about a third of the way through immigration. Hey, next time, be a month old. There'll be good stuff. Melina, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Supervisor, thank you so much for not pulling the plug about 20 minutes ago. And Peppers, thank you very much for coming on this journey with us. So I did end a lot happier than it started. I was a bit worried there's going to be a huge down because I have been feeling, I'm not sure if you watch Planet America, I've been feeling a little bit depressed about this Charlie Kirk stuff. Not just the actual death itself, but the way the world has reacted to it. It's just ugly. And it's just, I can just see it getting uglier. And so thank you very much for riding back up to the top of the roller coaster with me before I start heading down again in this last minute. Until next week, Dave will be back. Thank you, Melina.
Thank you.
Maybe see you in the next week or two. Maybe not. Either way, good luck with what comes ahead with the second kid.
Thank you.
Till next week, stay peppy.